Heidi Reynolds will not be present tonight. So our first order is approval of minutes of our January meeting.
I will move approval of the minutes. I was thinking of the way that I should put this here. I will move approval of the minutes, but with more information that I would like added into, that would be 5B, which was pre-application Traceway North project, David Gevers, and also more information into 5C, which was Stoner Prairie Park Design Consultant approval. And the purpose is clarification in our wording of what was discussed. I think the minutes should include more. So if that has a second, then I'll explain in discussion.
Is there a second? Okay, Julia
Okay.
seconds.
The first one would be 5B right there. Now, I want to, in advance, kind of say, generally for both of these, that I like the minutes to include the most important relevant information that anyone can easily refer to in the minutes. I did already suggest to Scott in advance of this, when it was draft minutes like over a week ago or so, to add more into there. Scott declined on the idea that the video has everything. I've never liked the idea that someone says, just go watch the video if you want to see more, because the written record in the minutes can be important, and it's easily accessible, and you can print it and save it, and then it lasts forever. Videos, you know, we change systems sometimes, and some of the videos may be gone. As far as 5B right here, pre-application Traceway North project by David Gevers, I know that during the discussion right there, Sarah raised a point which I thought was interesting, but I didn't catch the details. So Sarah was saying that there was something of an exception to the rule that David was proposing. I never did get it clear about what that was, so that slipped by me, and Sarah caught it and said there was a, you know, she didn't like the exception and slippery slope and things like that. I would like these minutes right here to include a little more in that section about what David Gevers was proposing, so that we have it in black and white and we can see it and we can refer to it in the future. This was a pre-application, so it's going to come back to us. So without having to go through and watch whatever it was, you know, a significant amount of time on the video to try and pick it all up, I would ask that Scott be requested to fill in more about whatever the exception or parkland dedication, something or other that David Gevers requested be added into our minutes for that one. For the second one, 5C, Stoner Prairie Park Design Consultant approval. Everything was done proper. I want to say that up front. And I would like a little more information in there, just to be clear, because it does get a little sticky about when people have a financial association. And now this was all discussed in our meeting, so I'm not making up anything new here. It does say right now, and this was actually suggested by me and added by Scott already, the last line that says, motion carried with Katie McDonald and Christina abstaining, which is what they did. That always gets people's interest about why someone is abstained. Now, we discussed in our meeting the reasons. I would like it to be in the minutes, which was, and I believe I have this correct, that Chris is employed by Psyche and Katie is employed by Parkitecture. Now, this isn't noted in the meeting or in the minutes, but I would like it to clarify that neither of them had any part in the discussion either, as well as abstaining from the vote. And that makes it all above board, clear, good on the record and everything, which is all proper. I don't want to suggest changing abstaining to recusing, which would be the more proper step, because they said abstain, so the record should show abstain. Just, report what happened, but in a little more detail and explain that. The alternative to not having that in the minutes could be that we have a presentation from the city attorney or city administrator or somebody about the proper way to handle things when you've got an association like a financial connection or employment with a company that's up for, consideration. And I think we don't really need that. We can just go with what we have, kind of watch maybe a little bit better. As I say, the more technically proper voting step would have been recuse, and that's what council does. So that's why I would like more into these two sections. And I would rely on Scott to write that up better. I don't have exact wording, especially for David Gevers, for the
I have a question
That would be
regarding
efficient.
the Gevers matter, and Sarah Schroeder, you were the person who had some remarks. Is there something you recall asking that you feel should be in the minutes there?
So I just remember asking that he is asking for an exception, basically, and I just called that out. And in my opinion, since this is just kind of a pre-meeting, I wouldn't add that in the meeting minutes just because it could change the next time it comes here. So yes, I remember asking about that. No, I wouldn't expect it to be within the meeting minutes just since it's an early discussion. So it's fluid. So I remember
Okay.
the conversation, but I don't think it needs to be in my opinion.
Okay, and Julia, I see here. Go ahead, Julia.
Yes. When I read the minutes, I was concerned about the information about what we discussed that night, because also it would the discussion was if Fire Commission was like the project that it was coming there with the exchange and how we are going to consider the park dedication fee. And I think my understanding was that everyone was okay, but we had to be, David mentioned that he need to run some of the, in order to do the exchange or the swap of land, he need to talk to his, he need to determine if it's possible or feasible to do that. But it was something that we said that we were open to discuss that in future meeting, so, and I don't see that here, you know what I mean? In the minutes, it seemed like there was too much discussion regarding the potential parkland dedication, including the property of the south side of Tracy Road. But at least we need to add another paragraph saying what it was that we are planning to do, or he wants to do, and that, the Parks Commission was open to that alternative. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Okay.
That one was my interpretation of that night.
Okay, so you're suggesting adding something along those lines? Okay, I see you shaking your head, yes. All right.
And Sarah has said she doesn't feel it necessary. I unfortunately did not have a chance to watch the meeting over again to try and catch that or whatever David Gevers said. So, I mean, that slipped by me until Sarah started being concerned about it in our discussion. So I guess I'll have to watch the video over again, which I don't like to have to make people do. But I guess Sarah was the speaker on that particular point. I mean, David gave his presentation. Sarah's the one who caught it and brought it up and raised a concern. I was hoping to hear more from Sarah about what this was that she saw that she was concerned about. So right at this point, I don't know. That's why I asked for more in that one. And as far as in the Stoney Prairie Park design, that just clarifies so that, everybody, whoever, city attorney, administrator, all of that can see we were very proper in what we did.
Is there a way for us to decide that we want a little more detail? But we're wanting to do that with some suggestion from Julia as well, but not knowing exactly what detail we want to add? We're stuck then, aren't we?
Well, Sarah has said she doesn't think it necessary.
Well, for her part, but Julia,
in the second
Julia's
part, I
adding the
guess
second.
what I would just verbally suggest here is that that it add in, Katie McDonald abstained due to financial association with Parkitecture, and Christina abstained due to financial association with Psyche, both abstaining from discussion and voting.
Right, that part's pretty settled, but the other issue is the Gevers presentation. So how do we
Well,
clean that up?
Sarah has said she doesn't, does anyone else think that there should be more in the David Gevers part?
Yeah, I thought that, Julia, that is what you suggested, that you think there should be a little more
Yeah,
there.
yes, and we
Oh,
we
okay.
can add a little bit more, and we can add Sarah concern, you know what I mean, there, because it was a concern, and it was a, you know, the city has never done that, so, you know, so it's a valid concern that we need to, because if we want to refer back in 2 or 3 or 5 months, when this project come back to us, to these minutes, we don't, if we read the minutes, we don't, what it was Park
Yeah,
Commission recommendation at that point?
right.
Or Park Commission, they have any concern about this swap of land or no, you know what I mean? So there's nothing here.
Okay, is there, Julia,
Make an amendment, or I may make a clarification.
I'll ask Julia, is there anything, any particular specific sentence, Julia, you want to offer? Otherwise, Patrick's got something he might,
I don't know, I need to watch the video, to be
Okay.
honest with you.
Yeah, and I haven't watched the video either. I really wanted to, and too many things. So I am going to clarify my approval of the minutes with amending that we ask Scott to clarify in 5B, pre-application Traceway North project by David Gevers, the suggestion or proposal or whatever it was by David Gevers into our minutes, which might be an additional paragraph for whatever happened there. That's, I'll make that one clarification sort of amendment, and we can vote on that,
yeah. Okay, ready to vote
on that, yeah.
on both,
I'll just make it on that one.
okay.
one first.
On the Traceway Gevers, those in favor of Patrick's amendment?
Of more information. Aye.
Opposed?
I didn't
Okay.
see any no's.
Okay, that motion passes, so
I don't think Sarah even voted no, did you?
it's
No,
all,
I didn't vote no.
Okay. all right.
everybody
So
was aye.
Everybody's okay with that.
Yes.
And then in 5C, Stoner Prairie, the sentence or something that I said, to add that in as well. And then vote on that.
All right, in favor of clarifying the relationships of some Parks Commission members to the proposal. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, then on the main motion.
Okay,
Main motion for the minutes.
the main motion for the minutes. Those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? That will pass.
Okay, good.
Okay. So, public appearances for non-agenda items? There are none. We will move on then to review and approve this agenda for tonight. A motion to approve?
A motion to approve.
Second? Christopher, seconds. All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. So we are on to our item 5A, North Fishatry Road Hub Final Design Update with Wade Thompson.
It's actually EA apparently. You have a different agenda than yours? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
The printed one from out there is alphabetical. Yeah,
oh, okay, I have,
yeah, on this one here, it's 5A.
yeah. Go ahead, Wade.
All right, hello, Park Commission. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, hopefully folks can see a blue PowerPoint. So again, we're here tonight to kind of continue the hub phase 1 discussion. more specifically talking final design, budget, and costs. So a few things I want to cover. We'll talk, again, just what the phase one components are. We'll talk about budget, and then we'll talk about costs. And then we'll lay out some options for the commission. And then obviously, want to hear your thoughts. And then ultimately, staff would be looking for a recommendation of one of the options that we'll present, or if there's a different option that the commission wants to go with. And certainly there'll be, a lot to discuss. So if at the end of the discussion, the park commission doesn't feel comfortable making a decision tonight, that's fine. And we could certainly continue the discussion next month with a recommendation. But again, the goal tonight, ideally, we would maybe reach a recommendation tonight if possible. So again, just want to talk quickly about, the phase one in terms of what I'll call 4 major components for that phase. The first is, again, kind of that community or park building. And again, I would offer that building is a new model for buildings at our community parks, and would also allow for a smaller phase 2 building footprint. And we'll talk about what that means. The second big piece is our outdoor covered hard court that also could serve as an ice rink in the winter. So we're looking at year-round recreation at that structure, as well as social gatherings. Third piece is just kind of a catch-all of playground, yard games, and socializing and seating areas. Again, serving the whole spectrum of our neighborhood and community, whether it's youth or adults. And the fourth piece is what we're calling an all-wheels track, serving bikes, skateboards, scooters, basically anything on wheels. And again, we feel this is a unique feature, not just in our system, but regionally as well. So again, just kind of identifying how those 4 pieces lay out on our site. We've got our community building right here, our outdoor structure right here, our playground, socializing and seating areas kind of in the center here. Then our pump track is to the east and to the north of the site. And again, just to remind folks of what these pieces look like. On the right, that's our outdoor structure, both in summer and, hypothetically in winter with our ice rink there. And then on the left, we see images of the front of the community building and then the back of the building as well. So we did talk about this last month in terms of givens as it relates to these components. Now I do want to, and I just want to reiterate these again before we start talking budget and costs. But our cost estimates were created in April of 2020. That's pushing almost 2 years ago. Some components were not initially budgeted for, and we can talk about that. As folks probably know, we are in a current, what I'll call inflationary market. We did check with our consultants, and they found an inflation number that is specific to the construction industry. And basically since 2020, past 2 years-ish, we're seeing 15% inflation in construction costs. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then generally what happens in these projects is you go from concept to refined final design. And in the course of that refinement, costs are, generally could likely go up given that refinement process. So again, what that all means is that our final design, as we've currently presented it, those construction costs will exceed current budget. So I want to talk a little bit about that budget. Right now, our phase 1 budget is basically 2 million, let's call it 450,000, just kind of rounding up. So now I want to talk about the costs that were accounted for when that budget number was approved. Basically our building, our playground, our all-wheels track, and then all the related site work. So those are all identified on this slide. And then generally speaking, in this type of process, we identify what's called a construction contingency. So basically what that does is that allows for wiggle room if your costs run a little bit higher once you start constructing. As a rule of thumb, 7 to 10% of total construction cost is a contingency. So adding up these 4 elements, and then I took basically 7% of this total, and that got me to this number here. Whoops. And then all those all these 5 elements up here adds up to this 3.5 million. Now, I do want to point out in that contingency, 7 to 10% is safe, but it's usually high. As an example, in our fire department buildings that we recently constructed, I believe, in talking with our public works folks, that ultimate contingency was about either 1 to 3%. So I guess what I'm saying with all this is that this number will not likely be spent, but it's there as a safeguard should our costs be a little bit higher than anticipated. So that's kind of the first piece here. The second piece is costs that weren't accounted for in this initial budget. And that is basically the covered structure. And you can see the cost of that covered structure here. Now, talking about the ice rink for the covered structure, that was never even identified in the concept. That came kind of as we started doing final design and heard more feedback from the community. We added the ice rink as another option for implementation. So those two features add up to basically 1.5 million. So you add up this number, and it's higher than this number. That's clear. And we'll talk more about that. But I just want to be clear that right now we're again over budget. So again, I think where the real discussion point is here is if we want to keep the integrity of Hub Phase 1 final design as we've been discussing, we will need to identify other potential funding sources and or cost reduction. So with that in mind, I want to talk first about other funding sources and then about potential cost reductions. So in terms of other potential funding sources, and I'm talking specifically about the all wheels feature, but we did apply to a Dane County grant program last year, and we're kind of said, if you guys come back next year, we will fund you. So we're, obviously that was nothing secure with that, but we feel really good about going back in May of this year, applying again and getting funds this year. We think realistically, we could get $150,000 from that grant program, but we won't know that for sure until, again, probably early summer of next year. Now, similarly for the pump track, which we've talked about, or the all wheels track, we've talked about our company in town, Saris. They are, again, a total supporter of this. In informal discussions with them, they have thrown out a number of 75,000 as a likely target for them to fundraise to support the all wheels feature. So you add that plus the hopeful Dane County grant funds, and we're talking about $225,000 specifically for that all wheels track feature. So that's, idea number one. Idea number two is, as we discussed last month, as the commission discussed last month, there are potentially some imminent development projects in the corridor. And there's probably a few in the hopper as well that haven't been presented to this commission yet. Again, no promises there, but point being is that the city will likely see additional park plan dedication funds in the near future from development in this area. The third piece here in terms of funding sources is Hub Phase 2. We'll talk about that in more detail. The fourth potential option is Arpa, which I believe the commission will be discussing later tonight. But basically that's a one-time federal government, essentially a subsidy related to COVID that could be used for a variety of city projects. And then the last idea is just a broad category of other. And certainly we can, folks have ideas on other sources, we can talk about that as well. So I want to talk more about Phase 2, Hub Phase 2. I think as we all know, and we've been very clear about this throughout the planning process, it's just a concept at this point. With Phase 1, where we went from concept to final design, Phase 2 is still in the concept phase. And I also want to point out, as we discussed last month, Phase 2 is subject to land acquisition. The concept identified planning on what is currently Plesco property, the tennis courts on the south side of Traceway Drive. So, and as we all know, I think Plesco has interest in discussing that with the city, but as Julia mentioned, there are hoops to go through for Plesco to get that property to the city. So I just want to kind of put that caveat out there in terms of, you know, a building in phase 2 is subject to land acquisition. So all that being said, we've currently budgeted a little over $5 million for phase 2. And again, I want to remind folks what that phase 2 is at this current point. So again, on the north side of Traceway Drive, that's the blue, that's our phase 1. Again, I think we're pretty familiar with that. South side, the orange, that's our phase 2. So basically the city owns kind of the eastern half of that orange area. And again, the tennis courts, Plesco's property is pretty much let's call it the western half of that orange area. And you can see a rough building footprint that would likely move to the west should we get this property. And then we would come to an agreement to use Plesco's parking lot for that phase 2 building. So we initially sized that building fairly large, well, really large actually, roughly 23,200 square feet. Now, as we move towards concept refinement, staff would propose shrinking that footprint to something in the neighborhood of 12,000 to 16,000 square feet. And I want to identify 2 main reasons why we're identifying that beyond the cost issues. We will have close to 4,000 square feet in our hub phase 1 on the north side of Traceway Drive. And we feel like we plan that building in a manner that will serve the north side, but will also potentially minimize certain amenities needed in a phase 2 building. The second idea here is that first tee, which is the kind of the youth golf educational group that was an initial project partner on phase 2. They're no longer in the picture in terms of being a building partner. I think in our initial concept, we'd allocated approximately 5,000 square feet of the hub phase 2 building to their operations with the idea that they would occupy that space and pay rent. Again, they're no longer interested in that idea. So again, I think that kind of moves us towards this idea of a smaller footprint for phase 2. And then just for context, so people can kind of conceptualize square footages here, our current community center and senior center, which is a 2-story building, we have approximately 8,500 square feet on each floor. So that building in total, the 2 stories, is about 17,000 square feet. So in terms of, you know, what that phase 2 space could or would have in it, it would still have the bones of our initial concept, meaning room for city staff, including maybe someday golf course management, you know, kind of the having some golf course management elements in there as well. Certainly, you know, phase 1 has some level of community rooms, but I think the phase 2 could have some additional community rooms that would complement and not duplicate phase 1. You know, classrooms, meeting rooms, rec rooms, you know, those sorts of things. And then the third piece, again, as was identified in the initial concept, is ideally we'd like to provide some neighborhood service provider space, you know, third parties that are doing community work in the neighborhood. They could potentially have leasable space in that phase 2. So talking with our consultants, with a reduced footprint for phase 2, they gave us an estimate of approximately $243 per square foot for that smaller footprint building. And we'll get into some of these numbers in a little bit, but what that ultimately means is that $5 million that we previously identified for phase 2, there would be money left over with a smaller footprint phase 2. So moving into, so that's, again, just some ideas on additional funding scenarios. Now I want to kind of circle back to the second piece of the puzzle here of potential cost reductions for our phase 1 design. And these basically came out of discussions with our consultant. Again, we want to keep the integrity of the site, but we want to, again, be sensitive to costs and identify places where we can cut without losing the kind of the core of the site. So on the right here is a table identifying different potential cost reductions. Staff went through this list with a, you know, kind of a fine-tooth comb, and the things that we've identified in red are the things that staff feels we could cut and still keep the integrity and of the site. And we'll talk more about those. But what I think I want to do is quickly run through each one of these, and then we can, again, discuss in more detail. So the first potential cost reduction would be reducing or getting rid of the movable partition, separating the community rooms. Now now all these are relative to the building in phase one. So again, we've got a community room here and a community room here. And we would have a partition in there. So folks could either, rent the entirety of the rooms, or they could be rented separately. So that's a potential cost reduction, getting rid of a partition. The second idea here is sprinklers. Now, we did talk with our fire chief, Joe Pulvermacher, pretty early in the game here, and got his sense of what, in an ideal world, he would want to see in this building. And he identified sprinklers. Now, per our existing city code, sprinklering this building is not required. But again, we put it in there per our fire chief's recommendation. But I do want to point out, technically it isn't required per code. The third piece here would be a reduction of the building size, approximately 150 square feet off the northern end of the building. So if you see this lighter purple, that is an area that our consultant has identified as a cost reduction that would be relatively doable in terms of maintaining the shape of the building, but again, shaving off some cost as well. Removing the canopy off the north, I just want to quickly show folks what that is. Again, this is the building here. We're looking out the back. This is that canopy that's identified. So losing this could potentially be, obviously there would be implications of losing this for the site, but that would be a potential cost reduction as well. Now, some of these other things are a little bit more technical in terms of kind of building functions and maintenance, but I'll do my best to explain them. There is an opportunity for radiant in-floor heat, which is, and Scott, feel free to chime in here, but essentially I think kind of more of a sustainable energy use. So something that we did propose in the concept or in the design, but certainly could be removed. In talking with our utilities engineer, Tracy Foss, she highly recommended that we keep this in, just in terms of good practice, good building development. The one below that is geothermal heat. And I think that maybe is a little bit more, could be reduced or eliminated. And I think maybe not has a big effect as removing that radiant in-floor heat. So that's something to think about as well. Another idea is less masonry on the exterior, meaning more siding, meaning probably more maintenance and upkeep over the life of the building. And I think there's also a visual, you might lose some visual appeal as well with more siding. And then design contingency reduction, that was just kind of a savings that our consultant could find based on kind of how they crunch the numbers. So that's a pretty good, pretty realistic in terms of being a likely reduction. Site lighting, again, we talked with our consultant. I think if we get a different kind of feature, a different kind of type, we can save on that. We're not talking reducing lighting and creating public safety issues, but it's more of just kind of the type of lighting that we would be getting. And then
that was for the parking lot.
Right. Yep. And the last one here, again, I'm talking with our consultant. We feel like we can shave off a few things in the playground, minimize some of the paved area, but really keep a really cool playground feature. So again, the things in red are the cost reductions that staff feels okay with. The other ones are ones that the consultant came up with just for the sake of discussion, but certainly are all on the table as we talk about potential cost reductions here. So kind of wrapping that all up, what I want to do now is essentially present some options to the commission. And basically we have 4 options and they're kind of variations of each other. But the first option would be essentially to implement current design now, meaning over the next year. But what that means is additional funds will be needed. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. The second idea is that we implement current design in a phased approach. And I could talk more about what that means. But again, that would imply additional funds needed. The third option would be a modified design, meaning some or all the cost reductions that we've just discussed, or even maybe some other ones. And then again, doing everything now. The fourth idea would be same as number 3, modified design with cost reductions, but in a phased approach. And then I think as relates to 3 and 4, which we can talk about, but I think 3 and 4 have a next question of, okay, if we're implying cost reductions, are we implying cost reductions to meet or exceed our current phase 1 budget? And if we're still going to cut but exceed the budget, where are those additional funds going to come from? So now I want to just briefly talk about this idea of phasing. Again, in options 2 and 4, we talk about phasing. So what does that mean? I think what that means is essentially phase 1 phasing options, meaning a phase 1A and a phase 1B. A phase 1A would happen in this upcoming construction season. A phase 2 would happen in the following construction season. So the phase 1 would really maintain the core of the site, meaning our community building, our playground, all the associated yard games, picnic, socializing areas, as well as a parking lot and landscaping. Now, phase 1B would entail the pump track and the covered hard court. And the idea here is if we go to get, for the pump track, as we talked about, we've got hopefully another 225 grand coming, sometime later this year. So the idea was after we get that money secured in 2022, in 2023, we start on the pump track. And the second piece of phase 1B would be the covered hard court. And as folks remember, there's 2 options there. Basically, it's an ice, so the covered structure without an ice rink is at roughly 800,000. If we add in an ice rink, we're talking another roughly 700,000. Now, I do want to point out with that covered structure, there's a lot of there's other options here as well. I think from a staff's perspective, we really like the idea of winter and summer use. And we also like the idea of a covered structure, meaning, movie nights, concerts, covering the ice rink from the sun in the winter. But there could be scenarios where we don't have a covered structure. We've simply got a hard court, basketball, pickleball. That limits our use of the site, but that's an option. And I think the cost on that is much less than 800,000. We're not talking near that much. A third option would be literally just an open grass area. So those are kind of varying levels of, I think you lose maybe some site integrity, but if cost is a driving factor, I think rethinking this structure is probably the place to focus some energy. So with all that in mind, again, kind of going back to that phase 1B, again, the pump track would be in phase 1B, and then the covered hard court or a variation of what I just discussed with or without an ice rink would be that phase 1B. Again, staff's recommendation, which we'll talk about in the next slide, would be to do that covered hard court with an ice rink, meaning year-round use of that facility. Okay, so kind of circling back, and I'm almost done here. Thanks for bearing with me. But these are our 4 options, and staff would recommend option 4, which is a modified design, meaning cost reductions. We will still exceed phase 1 budget. And then we also would recommend a phased approach, as I just discussed. So what that means is we still need to find more money. So if you remember the phase 2 refinement concept that we talked about, we would propose that additional funding to make up the difference be reallocated from phase 2 to phase 1. And then, as future parkland dedication comes online, if appropriate, we would make an effort to recommend directing those funds to this project as well. So just kind of wrapping up with numbers, what does this all mean? Again, our budget as of now for phase one is roughly 2.5. With those, let's call them phase 1A staff recommended cost reductions. Again, that was that table with all the red line items related to the building. That knocks down $144,000. So that gets us basically 3.4 for phase 1A. Phase 1B, now we don't have cost reductions identified, but we do have additional funding sources identified, meaning that Dane County money and hopefully the Saris money. So a revised 1B cost, and again, this is with all the bells and whistles. This is covered hard court with an ice rink. That gets us to basically 1.3 million. And again, there could be lots of variations of what that outdoor structure ultimately looks like. So what that means is that we would need an additional $2.2-ish million to fully fund what you're seeing on this screen here. And that money would essentially come from a reduced, again, what staff is proposing is that money could come from a phase 2 reduced building footprint, as well as some likely future parkland dedication funds. So with that, I'm done. I know that's a lot to digest, but certainly I'm, wanted to present options to this body, and I'm interested in hearing thoughts, comments. And again, if the commission feels comfortable today, ultimately staff will be asking for a recommendation moving forward in one of these options, or if there's a different option, we're certainly open to that as well. So with that, Scott, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, just thank you, Wade. Super job.
Wade, I have a question. Does the city of Madison have any nearby ice rinks?
The closest one I'm aware of is, and as a crow flies, I may be wrong on this, but I believe City of Monona, they have one on Broadway, just kind of, I guess, be north of the Beltline, and that's probably.
That's not close.
No.
No.
And, there might be some, I don't know if Madison actually has ice rinks that aren't just frozen ponds, or, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if they have anything like we're proposing. But Scott, I don't know if you're aware of anything nearby. I guess I'm not.
Yeah, I certainly I think they may have indoor facilities that have refrigerated ice and those kinds of things, but certainly I think the city, has outdoor rinks similar to what we have. So the idea of a controlled, because everyone is kind of aware of the conditions that it needs to be cold and those kinds of things. So I think this would certainly be a unique feature to the city of Fitchburg, but certainly a unique feature for the relatively close area.
Other questions? Anyone? Patrick?
Closest ice rinks that come to mind to me, and I don't think I've ever used them, would be Elver Park in Madison and Garner Park in Madison on West Mineral Point, just if that's comparable. I want to make a note here that we don't have any of this in our packet, so Wade, we have to rely on your slides right there to read things and pick things out. Could you go to the one that has about 8 options of the building?
Yeah, and the commission should have received this via email.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and we'll definitely, which slide, Patrick? I'm sorry.
It's got 8 options for the building, reducing square footage and canopy and things like that. You want us to advise or pick out things on there, right? For one choice anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea here is, again, I assume the commission is interested in discussing cost reductions. So if you are, these are things that I think are up for discussion.
Okay.
And then the things in red are the things that staff, would recommend or feel comfortable recommending as cost reductions.
One of the things that you mentioned as far as this building, if I have this right, would be to kind of eliminate the building did you say, and in other words, no roof over this? Did I get
No,
that?
no, no.
No?
What I meant, that's the outdoor structure. So,
That's a different,
yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is potential, so this is our building, that's a building, and that's gonna have a roof. But this structure, which is next door to the west, what I was saying is
which one are
potentially,
you pointing at?
It's the top left one, Wade,
Top left,
top left.
okay.
oh, I'm
It-
sorry. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, yes, yep, exactly, sorry.
That's a different building?
So this, okay,
Or
so
is that a
this is,
different view of this same building?
top left is basically looking south towards Traceway.
So that's a canopy off the back side of the building?
Okay,
Correct.
Okay. So then on that list of things, and I think the ones that I was kind of picking out myself, one of them in red there is reduced area by 150 square feet. Is that the first red one? Area reduction? As far as that one, I'm kind of feeling that reducing the building now means it's kind of maybe a now or never to build it, or it will never have it. So not real favorable about reducing the canopy. I'm not sure. I cannot read that on the screen from this distance. It's a little too small, but I know there's one canopy. I think it's the next one down, 79,000, which was the most expensive element on there. How important is that canopy?
Yeah, so that's what I thought you were, well, so that's this thing back here. This is the back of the building. So just think about like McKee Farms.
Wait, I don't even
Shelter?
see where your cursor is moving. Which picture?
Top left.
Okay, left again, all right.
Yep, so top left, if you'll see this kind of outdoor, open air shelter coming off the back of the building. So the idea would be, it's almost like an outdoor picnic area that's covered. So that's what we're talking about for that 75,000 or whatever. it was.
79, yeah. How important is it if that was removed, and is it something that could be added later, or is that a now or never thing again?
Yeah, I mean, I think Scott and I talked about that. I think anytime you have an outdoor picnic area, it's nice to have it covered, or a covered option. Certainly it could go away and the site could still function. But I think from a staff perspective, you think it's still really, it adds to the site. In terms of building later, I think generally, I'm not a architect, obviously, but I think to the degree we can design and build at once and not have to come in and piecemeal later. I mean, I think that would be our goal. We could certainly ask the question if it could be, put on later. Scott, I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
Well, I think it provides the same type of feature that we have at our other community parks with the open air shelter, if you would, McGaw and McKee. So I think that's kind of a feature that runs through our community park shelter facility buildings.
And this is what the canopy provides by itself, by the canopy, because it looks, I mean, it's a whole big open building altogether, isn't it?
The building's all enclosed, Patrick. Everything's enclosed. This is just what do I want to say? Well, it's similar to McKee, where you've got the indoor portion at McKee, and then to the south, you've got the open air covered area. So it's the building is all enclosed, and then, well, there you go. That's a good.
Yeah,
see
if
where the
people can see my cursor, so the orange and black, I mean, that's the building. That's walls and a ceiling. This is just kind of an overhang shelter where, again, you could put picnic tables under there. Folks could be out there, and if it's raining, not get wet. But yeah, just kind of a covered outdoor seating area.
Okay, and then back to the list. Other things that I spotted in there, I'm kind of wondering, again, if the masonry was whatever it was, 20,000 or something like that, is that something that could be added later?
No, I mean, again, I'm not an expert, but I think, we're talking about the exterior of the building. So either they're putting up brick now or they're putting up siding. And I don't think you can come back and switch it out. Yep.
So that's in other words, masonry, instead of, like you say, I don't know, some kind of siding, so it's a better appearance to the building to have the masonry as it is built.
I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is maintenance and upkeep. You know, with masonry, it's good for a lifetime. I think siding, you know, would probably require some sort of maintenance or upkeep. So,
Chris, I see you have a question.
I think Steve actually beat me to it. He had his hand up before I did.
Oh, okay. Steve,
I'm the public, so if you're willing to take public comment at this time
sure,
on the things so far,
yes,
I'll go ahead.
yes.
Okay. First, a question: is the rink proposed to be refrigerated for the $800,000?
Actually, I think it's about 6, and it is, and that's in addition to the 800,000 for the covered structure.
700,000. Okay. Well, that's impressive. A very small nit. It looked on your rendering like there's room for a multi-use path between the curb and phase 1 on the lower right there. We do need a multi-use path to extend up Traceway on that side of the street, and I'm glad that that seems to be there. With regard to the movable partition, does the floor plan, which I can't see on the slides, have separate chair and table storage for each side of the room? We do not want to make the mistake that we did with the library, where the movable partition cannot be used because nobody can use the small room because the table and chairs storage isn't accessible.
God help me out, but I think we talked about storage would be in a separate storage room. You're on mute. Scott, you're on mute. Scott, do you have anything to add on that?
I was muted. Yeah, you can see my cursor there. That's the storage to the west, if you would.
Can't see your cursor. Oh,
Oh,
now
there you go. Thanks, Wade.
okay. All right. So you're bringing them down the hall and into each side of that room separately.
Correct.
Okay. I am concerned about the 15% construction inflation that we have seen to date. And so that causes me to think that whichever option we use should include the word now. Because we're probably looking at another 15% before we get to 1B. And that means all of that money would have that expansion factor. And lastly, it occurred to me that this site, I'm looking at a map you can't see, has a huge Plesco parking lot just to the west from buildings that have been removed. And sometimes you see semi-trailers parked there, and sometimes we have bike rodeos there. But that, you can see it on the left edge of the site plan here. Can we defer the parking lot and have an agreement with Plesco to use their parking until a future phase? Because you will also have street parking on both sides of Traceway, and that street parking is very important for traffic calming and slowing the speeds of vehicles on Traceway. So I'd like to see the parking deferred. Those are my comments. Oh, and I should add that Bike Fitchburg strongly supports this project, and I am representing Bike Fitchburg.
So Steve, just a question. So you're saying by deferred, initially there would be no parking on the north side of Traceway in terms of a lot. Is that correct?
I'm saying that the lot that you have in this site plan, people are often surprised at how expensive parking is with hot mix asphalt, curb and gutter, drainage, and so on. If that could be deferred to phase 2 because of the parking, 4 rows of parking that are visible just to the left here, and that would be used as a courtesy from Plesco with a shared parking agreement. We might find that parking is never needed. And having less parking is always a good thing. This is served by the fish hatchery path, the Metro Transit, the Cannonball Path. So there's a lot of ways to get here without a car, even over the wider area.
And,
Yeah.
and actually the parking lot does perform maybe even a more important, circular, for the fire department for access and those kinds of things, so that it functions as that for the fire department.
Yeah, and to that point, some of the site final design tweaks was driven by public safety, vehicle access, creating a thoroughfare like Scott was mentioning through the site. But yeah, point taken. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, Chris,
Thank you for hearing me out.
thank you. Chris?
All right. I guess in summary, I would say that I largely agree with staff's recommendations on the, for one, on the list of items to scrub right now. I think that two things that we should strive not to compromise on are safety and sustainability. So in that regard, sprinkling, I think is important. Geothermal and in-floor heat, that's something that now is the best time to do it. And I'd be curious, Wade or Scott, if anybody has crunched the numbers on what the like return on investment on those are, like how long the geothermal would take to recoup its costs.
Yeah, actually, Scott and I are planning on talking with our city's building supervisor next week to get a better sense of that. Just anecdotally, I think geothermal was put in the library, and there's been issues with that, and it maybe hasn't been as effective as desired. But those are all things we'll check in on.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be.
Another thing we did talk about, the idea of phase two, if we were going to do geothermal for both of them, it'd be real difficult to not include it in phase one and then try to include it in phase two and then jump back north to phase one.
Do either of you know where the geothermal field is supposed to be located?
I know.
Yeah, because if it may not be feasible for it to be installed later if it's underneath, the park or the pump track or something, for example. So, yeah, I'd be curious what the return period is on that. And, certainly the systems have evolved and gotten better than they were 10, 20 years ago.
That's a good point. Yeah, it has been some time since that was installed. That's a good point.
So, yeah, that was my first point. I generally agree on the items on this page. And also, this total of $368,000 compared to the whole project budget is kind of a drop in the bucket. So it's like it's like throwing a deck chair off the Titanic, kind of. So I don't know that nickel and diming some of these things that are ultimately important are worthwhile. So that's my comments on that. Also, I think I agree with the idea of splitting up phase 1A and 1B. It's a little bit frustrating. I don't want to say frustrating. It's a surprise that that we were shown this big pavilion and ice rink and stuff that weren't included in the initial cost and initial budget. That's okay though, because I feel like as a designer, sometimes you want to say, I know we didn't talk about this, but here's a really good idea that you might be interested in. So that's fine. I'm a bit startled that without that, the initial budget for phase one is so high. Even taking out inflation, it's, I did some quick math on my phone. And I think it's like taking out the inflation still like 30% over budget. So that's a bit surprising, but whatever. Ultimately, as a city, we want what we want. So we ought to find a way to make it happen. But then as far as splitting this into phase 1A and 1B, that is probably favorable because it might make it easier for us to fund this project. And I think cutting that whole covered pavilion and ice rink from the project would be a shame because it kind of really is a jewel of the whole project here. And, it's what catches people's attention. It's something unique that we don't have elsewhere. So even though it wasn't something initially planned for, if there's a way for us to make it happen, I think that's probably wise. And to do so, I feel like we really need to make it 4 seasons to justify spending the money on that. So I think doing the structure without the ice rink is kind of a no-go as well. I think if we're going to put the money into building this big, beautiful pavilion structure, we need to make it usable for a season. So those two kind of go hand in hand for me. I think, and I think that those were all my big points I wanted to make.
Sarah?
Thanks. I just wanted to say that I think Chris hit a lot of key factors that I was considering. Is that I don't think that we should compromise on safety or sustainability. I think he said that perfectly. The only other comment that I had is just, it does seem as though these potential cost reductions aren't very significant. So I would, like he had said, question if they are worthwhile. And overall, agreed. I agree with the staff's suggestion of going into phases. My only concern that I have is that for the ice skating rink, so that actually would be a significant potential reduction with 700,000. And I guess calling out that it wasn't initially in scope does kind of make me wonder if it is something that we could consider cutting. Just that, one, it is a sport that does have a barrier to entry, that someone has to purchase skates or rent skates. It's seasonal. It wasn't within the initial scope, where I guess it seems like a definite nice to have. And it's a feature that it would make the space 4 seasons, but with the significant savings that it would present and having it not or initially be within scope. And I guess I would be curious even as to how it came about within community feedback and how late it was added in, and if we were actually able to assess a lot of feedback regarding that addition since it wasn't initially included. So that is just a concern that I have on features.
Yeah, I can answer that, Sarah. I think in our initial engagement, we did actually identify it as an option, and it was fairly popular in terms of feedback. You know, I think probably as we evolved with this concept, and just, you know, to some of the earlier points about investment and, you know, getting people there year round, you know, 24/7, I think it just made sense for us to plan for it, or as an option. You know, certainly if you're going to spend a lot of money in an outdoor structure, that's only really usable, you know, 4, 5, 6 months of the year. That's a thing. So I think just to try to maximize use of the facility, maximize use of the structure, we put that in there as an idea. But certainly, yeah, understand your points there.
And I might add too, Sarah, that you know, what we budgeted out was a refrigerated ice rink, sheet of ice. There are less expensive methods of creating an ice rink underneath there, you know, portable rink and things like that. So you know, at the end of the day, you know, I think we still can create that full season thing underneath the covered structure with an ice rink, but the method in which we provide the ice rink would need to be different, you know, with the refrigerated ice and all of those kinds of things. It's really controllable, but there are different types of portable ice rinks that we could include in underneath the within this structure.
Julia?
Okay, so yeah, so my thoughts, you know, I agree with everyone, with Chris and with Sarah. Some of the comments, I was surprised to see the ice rink because it wasn't in the original design, but you know, I understand why it could be the 4 season that mentioned Chris, you know, to have a 4 season park. The other thing that I was thinking is if we cannot do, because we are phasing out this, and I agree that we need to phase out this, you know, if we want to have the ice rink eventually, maybe we can build an ice rink, outdoor ice rink in the 9th spring golf, you know what I mean? In the meantime, to have something outdoor there connected to this park, very close. And also because that one is a park that is not fully used in winter time at all. So maybe we can think about doing an outdoor ice rink there in the meantime. The other thing about the canopy, if we are phasing out this project and the big cover is coming in the second phase, I think we need to have some shade in the place, and I will recommend to keep the canopy because to provide a shade in the in phase one. So I will keep that canopy to provide a shade that, especially in summertime, when it's very, very warm, we need to provide shade, like the other parks have. So I also think another way of that we are going to discuss this later, but ARPA funds, I am planning to bring an amendment to use some ARPA fund in this project too, but I agree that we need to phase out. I agree. I really like the idea if we, reducing the phase two, because if we are going to have kind of like a small community center or shelter here, we don't need to have something big in the other side and then in the south part. So I agree with that. I think it's a good idea to reduce the size of phase two. Yes, I received this information like late in the afternoon, and I didn't have time to revise this completely, but I think, I think what the staff recommend is, this is what it is. We know if the budget wasn't an issue, we can do a lot of things, but I also, I am concerned that the track is going to be in phase two, because this is a good attraction. I would like to keep that in phase one, but.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, just some context there, Chris, you kind of talked about just maybe a higher budget than you were anticipating. I think the pump track is kind of to me, a microcosm of that. So our initial estimate, again, it was 2 years ago. It was provided by a firm that didn't have a whole lot of expertise in that type of park planning, and a lot of people don't. It's a new thing. I think they ballparked $100,000 for the pump track. Our estimate is now $450,000. So that just kind of shows you right there. I mean, that's a substantial overrun. But again, I think we've got Saris on board. We've got really good consultants designing this thing. I think it's worthy of the money. To Julia, to your point, yeah, I mean, again, the phasing of the pump track was just kind of to try to make sure we get some additional monies, that 225 from Dane County and from Saris, before we start building that. But yeah, so that was kind of the rationale behind putting the pump track in a phase 1B.
Patrick, did you have more comment?
One thing I wanted to mention is what Chris was talking about, and I'm agreeing with a lot of this too. As far as the location of the geothermal, I'm remembering that I asked that last time, and I think that their answer was, for one thing, that they had to do some on-site soil testing to figure out exactly where to put it. Otherwise, I think that they were sort of looking at under a sidewalk to the north of the building. One thing that if it turned out that it was going to delay the parking lot, then maybe it could go under the parking lot. In other words, put the building part of it in, but the field in later under the parking lot, as if the parking lot is delayed. Otherwise, the only thing that I'm thinking here is the red one of the site reduction I would sort of disagree with, and the other red ones at the bottom, delaying those, I would agree with those. And I don't think that, that we should eliminate the sprinkling or the geothermal off of that list, and those are in black anyway.
And Chris, do you have additional comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up sort of what Sarah and Julia said, and sort of in contradiction to my first comments, but I would be curious if the ice rink is something that could be perhaps like a phase 1C or part of phase 2 or something, if it was possible for it to be planned for, but delayed as well, if that would have any merit. I have no idea whether it would or not, but just a thought.
Yeah, and I know, Scott, help me, I know we've talked about that, and I can't remember the,
Well, it's really, it's the infrastructure of everything that would need to be gone in, underneath the hard courts. You'd have to, there's power that would go to the west for the coolers and all of those kinds of things. I think you can easily lay, conduit underneath the concrete to run the wires and all of those kinds of things. So, I think you can kind of prepare for it and maybe put it in later.
So it
Scott,
sounds like the initial prep work for it is likely the most expensive part of it. So at that point, it may not be worth trying to delay it.
and Scott, there's no portable options, right? Yeah.
No, I think there is, I think Rob mentioned that there, if we don't do the refrigerated, because that was one of the things that I brought up is let's do the, the covered structure with the hard court and then not do the ice, but then, bring a portable kind of, because I asked, well, could we then put in the refrigerated ice? And they said, well, it's just, if you're going to do that, you do that up front, but there are other systems that we could put in there to create the skating rink underneath the covered structure. Which and another point too is we build the building, we build the playground and the amenities, we put in the bike track, and everything to the west is green, and we put in a basketball court, and we put a land rink there, and we consider it done. It's real in regards to a skating rink on the Nine Springs property. It's just, it's so undulated and those kinds of things. A rink needs to be, kind of in a flat area and close to water and those kinds of things. But certainly I like the idea that, the Nine Springs Golf Course is really, to some degree, this will end up being our winter, our winter park with, if you would, with, more use on the Nine Springs Golf Course and along with the skating rink on the north side, it would really create our community winter park.
Okay, and we have a member of the public, Mr. David Halford, who wanted to comment briefly. Yeah. The table, oh, okay. They'll get your mic running when you choose a spot.
Is it okay? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
My name is David Halford. I live at 2621 Tarpelivik Drive in Fitchburg, Wisconsin. We came in for another item, but just listening to this, I've heard perspectives, but I don't think I've heard a perspective of a taxpayer. And I hear Chris making the comment that this is likely 30% over budget. And as both a federal taxpayer and a state and city taxpayer, it kind of bothers me that there's consideration of accepting overruns or budget overcosts in an era where people are having trouble making ends meet. So I would ask you to certainly consider that if you're having a project go 30% over budget because you're going to construct a refrigerated ice rink with covered facilities, I'd ask you to consider what that cost is to the taxpayers.
Thank you. Julia?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment that most of the funding for this park is coming for park dedication land. It's not gonna come from taxpayer money. And the ice rink is something new that we haven't decided yet if we are gonna build it or not. So that one I want to make sure that, and this is a park has been in construction or in talking for more than 5 years for an area that they don't have a park in the north part of Fish Hatchery. those multifamily, they don't have a park. The golf course, even though it's a community park, in order to use it, you need to pay to play golf. So, so I think I understand that yes, construction cost is affecting not only the construction of park, it's affecting the construction of everything that we are doing at the city. And the city has been very, you know, I will say, you know, looking for ways to fund some project with grants. We are very proactive in that, you know, and looking how this construction inflation is, you know, is affecting a lot in our city. So, but yeah, so we are aware, and thank you for your comment. But I want to assure you that most of the money funding this park is not going to come for us, from taxpayer money.
Thank you. Do we have other Parks Commissioner questions or comments for Wade or Scott? Patrick?
Wade, are we also discussing that large open building to the west? Or anyway, a comment on that?
Which building?
The-
The covered structure?
Yeah, the open covered structure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm just wondering if there has been any more consideration about some way in the future to enclose that in the winter, like I had asked about at the last meeting. My point is that I see these open shelters that we have already, McGaw, McKee, Swan Creek, Tower Hill, all these Kids Crossing, all of these open shelters going to waste in the winter because it's so cold out. And I have been way in the past to some Madison parks where they have portable walls that close them in. So I just want to mention that again. It would be nice if there's a way to block the wind partly or some accommodation of the building design structure so that it might be enclosable in the future so it's a little more habitable in the winter. Otherwise, it's pretty unbearable, like say in McKee outdoor shelter, to use it in the middle of winter. Nobody does that. It's full of snow and it's just like abandoned for all winter. So that's a comment.
Yep, and I think we would probably have to analyze, you know, what types of uses would that allow? And is there a demand for those? And then, yeah, Scott and I have kind of talked about some of that stuff, you know, potentially curtains. You know, I think we run into some fire safety ingress egress issues, but we can kind of re-examine that and see if we can come up with anything that would potentially work.
Okay.
Anything else from anybody? So Wade, you were,
Steve Arnold.
yes, Mr. Arnold.
Yeah, just two examples of that kind of thing that Patrick was talking about. Both at Tenney Park and at Vilas Park, they take picnic shelters and put walls in the winter and make them into ice skating, warming areas and skate rental. And because they have the natural lagoons in both places, here, you know, that would be our ice rink. So I don't see that applying. Although, thanks for the idea, though.
I have been to Tenney, and I remember that one being enclosed and warmed in winter.
Well, a follow-up question I have, though, that let's say there was no ice rink there, it would still be court play available into winter. And is it any advantage to still thinking about some kind of movable wind block to extend use for that reason?
Yeah, and I've seen at the McKee Open Shelter, people try to hang blue tarps all around it, and the wind, you know, tears through the building anyway. Even I've been there on windy days in whatever summer or something, is kind of makes it unusable since it's so open.
So the question, then my little follow-up question to that is, we don't know the answer about types of wind blocks. Just assuming you'd have to find out what products there are, what kind of hardware would be required. It, just a guess would seem to me to be something to be added on after the fact, but your designers, consultants would have to let us know that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we kind of explored that a little bit, and we didn't really come up with any feasible scenarios, you know, in terms of making that like a 3-season or 4-season space. But so I would say at this point, we probably don't have a lot to offer in terms of new ideas on that. But you know, we certainly could look into it. Again, that would be additional cost, you know, any
Right.
kind of wall or, you know, beyond what we've talked about today. So yeah.
Understood.
It's-
Patrick has,
It's the idea of, there may be some variations in the way that the building is built as far as, you know, those beams and everything that would lend towards later on coming up with, like you mentioned, curtains or portable temporary walls or anything like that. Some shelters that are built, they just do not lend to anything later on, closing them in.
Yep.
so now we've got a lot of information and opinions expressed. What about coming to some conclusions tonight, or is this something that the commission wants a month to kick around since we really didn't get a long look at the information? What do the Parks Commissioners think about that? Chris?
I myself don't know if I'd be ready to vote right now. I think what might be nice for next month is if we had, you know, taking sort of all of our thoughts and staff's thoughts into account, and then getting a more perhaps a more detailed breakdown of all the pricing kind of in one big, you know, one big easy to see chart where we can see kind of where we end up after all these things that, you know, I think we found a lot of things tonight that we agree on. I think I'd like to see where that leaves us and where we stand, and then be able to spend some more time on it, and then perhaps next month be able to say, you know, how we want to move ahead.
Anybody disagreeing with Chris? Well, I'll call on Julia to answer. She may agree or disagree, but Julia.
No, I want to ask a question to Wade. If there is any time sensitive, you know, deadline or something that you need to move forward with the design and.
I mean, I think we're still in, Scott chime in here. I think we're in pretty good shape. You know,
Okay.
I'd rather the commission feel comfortable about
Okay.
what you want to do. But yeah, certainly, you know, we
So
hope
you
for
can wait another month.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
Okay.
And what we'll be doing too is visiting other committees and getting their thoughts, and this is certainly a big decision, and you know, we don't want to make it hastily, but I think Wade, I think we've done a good job of, you know, if there's a will, there's a way, and you know, at the end of the day, we've got dollars allocated and budgeted for phase 1 and phase 2, and I think there is a way to get it all done within those budgeted dollars. We'll have to move some things around, but you know, to Steve's point, we wait another year, you know, then you add 10% and 10% and 10%. So it's it just more food for thought.
Okay, so then we can have Wade move on then to 5B.
Actually, could I just, one more
Yes.
question on this topic? Chris, could you describe a little bit more about kind of some additional detail that you'd like to see next month, just so I can make sure I come prepared
Yeah,
for that?
how do I describe this? Could we get basically like take all these numbers that you've showed us here, and then create like I don't know, like a flow chart or a spreadsheet or something that says, here where we started, here are the savings that we decided on for phase 1, here's breaking out into, you know, 1A, 1B, and then kind of this, you know, like a bracket, like where we start, and then as it all trickles down, where we end. And so then kind of how do we stand with phase 1A, 1B and 2. And even, you know, if we can see like how we can, you know, take some savings from phase 2 to add it to phase 1, just kind of,
Sure.
if there was a visual way to convey
Yeah.
all that, I think it might be helpful for us.
Well,
Yep.
in fairness, you know, you've just had a real short time to take a look at it, and, you know, that if there's an easier way to display it and, you know, for visual, at the end of the day, like I say, there's you know, the dollars between the two is we can get this whole thing done, so.
Okay,
Can,
and
can I
Julia?
add something?
Yes, Julia.
Oh, so yes, I agree with Chris. You can have like a spreadsheet. This is what I have in my comment to have like, you know, and also if you can add how much it's gonna cost, you know, with the option of the ice rink, you know, the one that you propose, and if there are other options like a portable ice rink, you know what I mean? If you can find how much those cost to, you know, to have other options too, it would be great.
And if I might add too, that we're kind of going to the next, you know, we've said at the beginning that the success of the facility is really going to be in the programming and the staffing and those kinds of things. So we're beginning to start to put those, you know, those expenses together, which, you know, I'm sure is going to be asked at some point if we're going to build it, you know, what is going to be the annual operating expenses and those kinds of things. So those are other things that we're kind of working on.
And maybe I could
Okay.
just,
I want to say something. You say if we are gonna build it, no, we are gonna build it. We have to be positive, okay? We are doing it.
I appreciate that, Julia. Can you get 5 votes for us?
and I guess one last question, is there any, and I totally understand and respect the commission's desire for more time on this, we were anticipating that. But I'm just curious, is there any elements of what I presented tonight that the commission is comfortable in, I don't want to say approving, but just as an example, like the idea of, you know, phase 2 monies being used? I mean, is there anything that the commission is comfortable with kind of solidifying tonight, or do you want to wait for everything till next month? And I'm not even saying like the amount of phase 2 funds, but just so, is there anything that can provide clarity to, you know, for staff over the next couple of weeks, I guess?
You know, is the commission comfortable with the methodology of, at the end of the day, getting both phase 1 and phase 2, you know, constructed, that kind of thing?
Julia, you had a remark?
You know, you mentioned phase 2 to reduce the size, and I am okay with that. And then if we can use some of the saving, who knows when we are gonna build phase 2, because we need to build phase 1 first, you know what I mean? But I like the idea that phase 1 has a shelter with community room in case that phase 2 is getting delay, you know. At least we have something in phase 1 to provide to that area, to those residents, to have a covered shelter that, you know, is with a nice size. So I am okay, you know what I mean, to reduce phase 2, because I want to be realistic and pragmatic about who knows what is going to happen with phase 2, you know what I mean? So.
And I do want to point out too, again, and I mentioned it, but phase 2 is subject to land acquisition, which again, I know Plesco is having those discussions right now, but there's no guarantee that they can release that land, you know, based on some of those strings attached. So just want to make that clear as well.
So Wade, you had the question though that's still outstanding about the comfort level of individuals here of using phase 2 allocated funds. Any questions for Wade on that topic? Or opinions to share?
I don't have a question, but I guess for my opinion, I would say that, and I don't know if you need an official motion for this of the sort, but I would feel comfortable saying that or even making a motion to see as to how the whole council feels, or the commission feels. But I would feel comfortable saying that appreciate the phased approaches, agree with shrinking the hub phase 2 portion, and then would move the final decision to next month's meeting.
I like that.
I do too, and Sarah, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's,
So
that's your motion. Now,
that's yep. So a phased approach, decreasing the budget for phase 2 and providing a final decision in next month's meeting.
and I see Chris is offering the second? Do I see that right?
I'll second.
Okay. Those in favor with that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Now,
That's
Wade,
excellent.
again, 5B, Park and Open Space Plan update.
Yeah, and I'm gonna share my screen as well. So you should have got this in your packet, and hopefully folks have had a chance to look through it a bit. So basically what I'm doing here is, again, the action items are kind of the meat of the Parks and Open Space Plan. So the thought was, what you'll see, what we'll talk about tonight is essentially, kind of the culmination of months of feedback and trying to fit it into the existing framework. But again, a goal tonight would be to maybe get an action that staff is, generally moving in the right direction on this. And then we would clean this up if there's any comments tonight, and then come back to you probably in April, just given current staff workload, with a final draft, including this, and then the previous 2 sections, basically the executive summary as well as the data inventory. So I don't think I'm going to go through everything tonight. I think a lot of stuff that you guys have seen, but certainly if we want to pick at certain things, I'm happy to do that. And I will touch on a few things, but the gist of it is everything you see in red on this document is kind of new stuff, again, based on feedback. I think I just quickly want to point out, I did add a vision. That's kind of a common practice in planning exercises. And this was kind of reflective of what I was hearing of making sure we really are clear about the role of Fitchburg Parks as it relates to like environment and resources. So really calling out kind of that land ethic element, but also making sure that we understand it's kind of a balance of that with also our more passive and active recreational endeavors in our system. So I just tried to address that comment about making sure our parks provide that environmental and resource function as well. And then getting into the action items specifically. So again, I don't think I want to talk through all these, but added a few things to action item 1 in terms of specific spaces. I will update the map, based on some of those changes.
Question, Wade, do you want us to save questions till you've gone through all of it?
Whatever, we can stop. That's fine.
Backing up just a bit, the signature theme, location, potential uses. The first grouping under agriculture, we have Stoner Prairie Park, and I wanted to say that the 3 meetings we did have, we never talked about an agriculture theme in the planning with the people there. And I understand it was long used as farmland, but is it really necessary to even have Stoner Prairie on this grid any longer?
Yeah, we can certainly take it up. I think so I was involved with developing the neighborhood plan back in 2014.
Okay.
And my recollection was to the, on the west side of Badger State Trail, so west side of Seminole.
Yes.
There were lands identified as potential future park. And that was the area I was referencing, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's not developed yet, but yeah, we can, and I think years ago, we kind of had this vision of that trail being kind of this corridor of different types of agricultural things happening along that trail. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen that come to fruition, but yeah, I have no problem getting rid of Stoner Prairie if that's that
was my question.
Consensus.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yes, Katie?
I just had a quick comment that I would still encourage you to evaluate putting in community gardens as you go through the master plan process for Stoner Prairie.
Right. Oh, right. I don't mean to say it, I was looking at it more of this agriculture theme.
Right.
But,
Right.
yeah, community gardens can fit a lot of places in parks smaller than this, so that's good everywhere.
Yeah, just feel free to stop me. Again, I'm probably not gonna hit every red line here, but if folks wanna,
Can I make a comment
Comment
before you
too.
move?
Yes, Julia?
Okay.
And I'll get you.
So in the winter section, you need to add Mackey Farm Park because we have the ice rink there.
okay,
Well, there's an ice skate rink in Hugel Jamestown too.
yeah, and I guess the idea of these theme parks, it's not trying to capture every feature at every park, it's more about parks that are devoted to specific themes. So, you know what I mean? So just because McKee has an ice rink doesn't mean it's like devoted to winter theme. And I have no problem adding it in, but I think the initial, kind of the idea here is parks that at their core, they have kind of a related theme, so.
But can I make a comment?
Yes,
Because I think people are using the Mackey Farm Park more with the ice rink than the golf course because
Yeah.
there's nothing there.
Yeah,
Right
and
now.
that was, when we initially developed this plan, Julia, I think the idea was to really try to make the golf course more of a winter spot. And we haven't done that yet, and I think we still would like to, but, yeah, understood.
Comment from me?
yep.
Okay,
Please, sorry.
as far as what you list as sports field, McGaw Park, being a very big proponent of McGaw Park, I'm a little bit miffed at the description right there as it being just a sports field. A lot of people think that way, and in your list right there, you didn't have the volleyball that's in there also. But McGaw Park has about half of it is in woods and an extensive trail system, being the one that has for, 20 years opened up and rejuvenated and maintained those trails. And in the winter, none of those things that you have listed right there are active in the winter, but there's a lot of people that come to walk on the trails in McGaw Park. So if you will still want to call it a sports, then it's more of like an active and a passive sports in McGaw, between the summer activities of all those listed and the winter activity of hiking, walking with dogs, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing. Lots and lots of people come there to walk on those trails in the woods because it's out of the wind.
Yep. And again, this framework isn't meant to preclude a use at any park. It's, I think an example is, the pickleball courts. I mean, we identified McGaw Park as kind of a center for sporting events, sporting fields, and so pickleball made complete sense there. But yeah, I mean, point taken. Again, we're not saying just because it says sports field is a theme that you can't have other things happening there. So yeah, we can rework some of this.
Yeah, I know it is probably the biggest sports complex, if you want to call it that, since it is the largest park in Fitchburg, and all of those active sports things go on in the summer, or maybe even 3 seasons. It's just there is an activity in winter there too, the only activity that continues through winter.
Looks like we're
Other
gonna,
thoughts?
no, Wade, looks like we're gonna let you keep going.
Actually, I'm seeing Steve Arnold with a hand raised. I don't know if folks can.
Oh, you know what, I'm sorry, I don't catch that yellow hand in the background there. Sorry, Steve, please. Yeah, there, that's a little better.
Okay. Two things. One, a small nit. Active and passive are really very specific terms that are indigenous to parks and recreation people. And other people understand those words a lot differently. I know from my work in city government that we mean organized sports and informal individual or small group activities. But, you know, snowshoeing is really active and not passive. And there are other sports that could be classified as active that you don't get your pulse up very high. So I would just recommend that even if you removed it from the vision statement and said something that was a little more meaningful to the general public, I think that would make the plan more readable. The main thing I wanted to talk about, you'll recall last winter I came before the Park Commission and talked about the Fitchburg Greenways system proposal. Since that time, we took it to some other committees, which also liked it. And then we took it to the mayor, and the mayor said, well, I think it's a good idea, but I think it needs to be in the park and open space plan update first. So here we are. So there are several places where it could be included, including signature parks, grant funding. And I met with Scott and Wade earlier this week to talk about that. But I think it would be very valuable if for moving this project forward, if the Park Commission were to instruct Wade to incorporate the Fitchburg Greenways system into the plan as fully and completely and thoroughly as it could be included, so that the mayor will be satisfied and we can move forward with things like the resolution of approval, fundraising, CIP projects and things like that. So I would ask you all to do that. Case in point is in the screen that's up now under biking, there should be a third thing, the Fitchburg Greenways system. And it fits in really well into the seams theme of the overall plan and connecting population, residential areas, commercial areas, and parks. So I think I would be very grateful if you guys did that tonight.
Okay, well, what we're doing here isn't a final approval, but Wade, do you have comments about, and or Scott, about that?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add to that. Yeah, Steve, Scott and I talked earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, I'm losing track. But yeah, I think the proposal is a great idea, would add to the city's park system. And yeah, I think we had talked with Steve after this, the packet came out, but I envision adding the Greenway proposal in a few places, you know, in this framework. So
Okay,
for the final version.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Carry on, Wade.
Yep. And I'll probably just keep going unless people want me to stop. I'll probably gloss over some of this stuff.
That page right there. Go up just a bit higher. A little more.
You want to see the page number or what?
No, your copy there on the screen is clear. In the packet, there's some words that are overtyped or something. There's something messed up about that. But and I don't know how that is. I did notice the infamous picture of the beer garden was shifted around. I don't know if that's what caused the words to be messed up in what we're looking at in the packet. But there's been objections to that picture of the beer garden.
Well, there's also been accusations that we weren't clear about this in the plan. So whatever you guys want me to do with the picture, I'm happy to do.
Well, the picture doesn't see it. I look at the picture and for me, it doesn't mean that it's a beer garden. It could be picnic table around a shelter.
Well, it says beer garden underneath the picture.
Yeah, okay, we remove the name.
What page are you looking at in the packet, Patrick?
14.
14?
Out of 69, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see,
There were 4 pictures that I think are rendered here on the end of the previous page that in the packet were pushed to the beginning of this page and kind of push everything else down.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
so-
maybe when, Scott, maybe when you were PDFing stuff got turned around, but I guess
Around.
hopefully what's on the screen is,
yours is
clear.
clearer, yes, and yes, the other 4 pictures are not on your page, so your copy is clearer.
If you scroll up, you'll see those other pictures, I'll bet.
That could explain it, yes.
Does that
Wait,
cover
you
that?
can
Or-
replace that picture with a picture from the McKee Farm Park with summer concert. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I guess the action item is about public-private partnerships. And this picture is showing a public-private partnership. So I can try to find a different picture of either no picture or a different picture of a public-private partnership.
That might help.
Sure. Yep, no problem.
Carry on?
Again, just folks stop me if they want to talk about anything in particular. Again, this is all, all things that we kind of have discussed. Now, I think maybe I'll just stop on 7.
Like,
So I think this is, a broader discussion about, well, the hub that we just talked about, and then the teen center that we're currently planning for. Those are currently what I would call under the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative umbrella, which I'm involved with, but also kind of in the Parks Department. That may not ultimately be the best place for these kinds of facilities. Other larger communities have separate departments that deal with managing those types of facilities. So I think the idea is planning would work with parks to come up with some options, one being status quo. But certainly as the city grows and develops, as we take on new facilities that we've not traditionally managed, I think to make sure we're serving our residents efficiently and economically, makes sense to come up with some potential ideas for discussion. So that's kind of what that item is all about.
Can I mention something? Wait,
Oh.
remember that we need to, sorry,
Go ahead, Julia.
the town of Madison Park, I think we are acquiring one park from the town of Madison.
Yep.
So I think that we need to be sure that we incorporate that park here, I don't know, in your list of park or whatever.
Yep, we'll get that on our map. Yep, you bet. But just so folks know, I think they do have a community garden over there as well, and we're planning on continuing, that garden there as well. Again, just a lot of stuff that was, based on feedback. I tried to wordsmith a little bit to just, but hopefully I captured everyone's general sentiments. And then again, we have the Greenway proposal. I'll probably tweak that wording a little bit and maybe fit it in some other items as well. And then I think the last thing that's new that I didn't probably highlight in red in the packet, but I think last time we kind of talked about, is there a way we can maybe just prioritize some of these action items? So what I did is I came up with a table, basically 2 levels of priority. Well, I guess a priority designation and then an ongoing designation. And the idea would be, the priority items are the ones that we want to work on or make substantial progress in the next couple of years. And then the ongoing are things that are, substantial progress or completion as demand dictates. So basically what I did is kind of, again, put every action item into one of those 2 categories. And I think, actually in talking with Scott, I really like this. I think it'll help, again, prioritize commission and staff priorities, in the next few years, so.
I would like to ask a question. Oh, Sarah has her hand up first.
Sarah, go ahead.
Thanks. I Wait, if you scroll up just a little bit, for the advancing of the Greenway proposal, that was a unique proposal though, correct? Like, will we continue to see that on its own, or is that just going to be added here? Because I guess I'm confused on how that was uniquely proposed before, and the idea of just adding something makes me apprehensive.
I'm sorry, could you say that again, sir? Didn't quite follow, or just,
Sorry, from this terminology, advance the city's Greenway proposal. Last year, we had a separate Greenway proposal come here to the commission for review. And I didn't think we actually took final action on that. I was under the impression it was going to be coming back again. That I guess adding that in here without it coming back again makes me apprehensive was my comment.
yeah, and really this is just, based on Steve's comment. So this is just kind of a policy direction saying, the city will work with interested parties, and I can wordsmith all this out, to advance the proposal concept. All those details of what the concept ultimately looks like would still be subject to, park commission approval. But this is really just kind of creating that 30,000-foot policy language to start down that path. Does that make sense or clarify or?
Well,
Can I speak to that too?
Sure.
yeah, because
So recall that you guys said, yeah, this seems like a good idea. Staff, we think you should continue to pursue this on the idea that it would come back. I then drafted a ordinance, a resolution that basically said, we're going to have this thing and the Park Commission and the Parks Department are going to master plan it and we'll go from there. And I shopped it around to some alders who liked it, including Julia. And I shopped it to the mayor, and the mayor said, well, I think that this should be incorporated into the Park and Open Space update first. So here we are. So he wants it in the update. He wants it in the update. And if it's in the update, then he'll entertain the resolution that says we approve of the concept. We direct the staff under the advice of the Park Commission to master plan it, and then we'll budget the money and pay for it, and we'll work it through. And that's when it will come back to you.
yeah, this kind of gives us the ability to put that information together and bring it before the Park Commission. And if the Park Commission decides at that point that they don't want to advance it, then it's done at that point. But this inclusion in the Park and Open Space Plan per the mayor allows it to go forward. And to your point, Sarah, the Park Commission, in theory, you said, yep, keep working on it, but it hasn't come back to the Park Commission for their final approval. But before we could do that, the mayor wanted it included in the Park and Open Space Plan update.
That's why it's been stalled for a year.
Okay, that makes sense as to how where we're at. I guess I'll be curious to see as to kind of how that language is framed, because I did voice concerns about the Greenway proposals as to just some of the comments that were brought up in that initial meeting. So I guess that's just my only hesitancy to all of a sudden have it in our plan, but that's all. But I understand that that's where we're at with the process.
Sarah, do you mind talking to me offline sometime about what your concerns were? I didn't remember them.
Sure.
I'll get back to you.
Okay, Patrick?
Okay, regarding the entire plan right here, and it wasn't real recent, but, so it's getting a little fuzzy, but some 2-3 months ago or so, we received some recommendations from Michael Stevens, president and representing the Seminole, if it's Seminole Glen or so, I can't remember, Homeowners Association or something like that, on the east side of McKee Park. And I'm wondering if those comments have been considered, or do we need to discuss incorporating and including those comments in this plan? And I mean, one, for example, the most prominent suggestion that he said, we're kind of already covering it, remove that picture of the beer garden. But a lot of things related to that too.
Yeah, again, I don't recall all the details, but I think the general election was to create a policy that wouldn't allow for a beer garden type facility in city parks. And I
I'm not-
also recollect the commission taking a vote to not put that prohibitive policy language in this draft. So there's further
okay,
detail on that I'm happy to discuss.
As I say, it was a couple months ago that Michael sent us the memo, and Michael Stevens' comments were provided to all of us in the past. So as I say, I'm not remembering the details. I don't know if it exactly like put a strict prohibition on alcohol. I don't think he was saying that. And since we don't have that memo currently in our packet, it's a little hard to pick up on his various recommendations, but I thought that his recommendations were well thought out. And so that's why I want to bring this up right here since we're discussing this plan. I liked his comments.
Yeah, and just one more quick point on that. I think, if I remember the points too, I think a lot of that stuff is not, it's relative to a specific proposal. If and when we get a proposal for food and drink in a city park, that's when that stuff gets hashed out. In my opinion, a level of detail related to food and drink in city parks this plan is not the appropriate place to get into detailed policy. This is 30,000 foot level policy. So.
Yeah, and I have, kept in my pile of papers the more recent communication from the Seminole Glen Condo Homeowners Association, not specifically an individual. And it was not asking to prohibit alcohol sales, anything of the sort. It was talking about process for specific projects that are discussed down the road. So looking at it from that perspective, it is more of a policy about proceeding in a way that's uniform each time and covers all the points that parks commissioners or city staff or taxpayers the council, what we decide in specific cases, we recommend the council decides what they want to do with it. So it's sort of a due diligence document, and probably, as the way Wade describes it, not really necessarily a fit for the Parks and Open Space Plan, unless someone else wants to make a strong argument that everyone agrees upon. But it's something that it could be useful in general. And I see, Chris, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, they wrote us two separate, sort of on two separate different issues. And so they're, one may relate to another, but these were separate different kind of conversations that he was having with us, as I remember it. As Wade mentioned correctly, they did ask for beer gardens to be specifically prohibited in city parks, but as a council, we voted to specifically not include that in our parks plan because, as everybody should be aware by now, but for the record, we are not currently planning or proposing any beer gardens in Fitchburg, for the record, but we did not want to omit that as a possibility moving forward. We felt like Wade said, every park, every project needs to be taken on their merits individually, and wholesale, it was not something we wanted to write out of the city.
Correct.
Second thing was a longer list of ideas or protocols that he gave us. And I think as a commission, we were all, generally in favor of what he wrote us, and we thought that they were all points that had merit and were worthwhile, but not that this document was necessarily the place to include them, and that they kind of summarized how, we sort of imagine that this body and other government bodies should function in the first place. So we didn't feel like it was anything that we ought to specifically include in this plan. So that's my memory of both of those two things, if that clears up for anybody.
Thank you.
That does sound accurate with me too, as you go through it.
Thank you.
Steve has his hand up also.
Steve, your background. Go ahead.
You like it? So if you go to number 15, Wade, we are working on two sources of funding for the Greenway system. AARP, a Livable Communities Grant, and Dane County Bicycle Association grants. And there has been a proposal for our B-cycle systems to apply for transportation alternatives from the US DOT, administered by the state. So under this 15, I would say under B, government or non-government grants rather than federal, state, and county. And then the other thing is that there have been two proposals to adopt portions of the Greenway system over the last few years, none of which have been accepted yet. And I think that Friends Group should be called out as C here, as another source of support for the city from outside the city's own budget. Saris was interested in part of the Cannonball Path, and the Crossings Condo Association wanted to be a support of their portion of what I call the Lacey Road Greenway. That's what I have.
Anybody else? Hands being raised that I am missing? No, I appreciate Mr. Arnold's comment about friends of, whether it's Friends of Fitchburg Parks as an overarching or individual small. That's, I think, a helpful mechanism at many times.
Yeah, and just to reinforce that point, in number 9, we did add some language about, the action item is kind of conceptually about partnerships. And we added, some language specifically speaking to friends groups, partnerships, so, yep.
Okay. Anything else before we move on from this update? Julia?
Yes.
That way, thank you.
Yeah, if in number 9B, Wade, if you're gonna follow a Steve comment, you need to update this one too.
Yep.
All right. So this is an update, and we are ready to move on to 5C. Do I have that right, Wade? Are we ready to go?
Yeah, this will be your last round of Wade for the night, so,
Darn.
yeah. All right, so
You're over the 2-hour time limit, Tom.
yeah. All right, I'll keep this one short. So again, yeah, I don't think there is a ton to discuss here, but wanted to kind of update the committee or the commission. And Scott, feel free to chime in, but we've been talking the past few months about this ag park idea at Terra Vesta. Basically a park property, 15 acres in the southeastern part of the development that would be devoted strictly to, well, not strictly, but kind of have that agriculture theme that we talked about earlier. So we've talked with our city attorney, we've talked with our city administrator, we've circled back with the developer, and we think we're finally ready to release an RFP seeking services for essentially planning of the park. And right now our concept includes community gardens, traditional small scale plots in the southern part of the property, some accessory garden facilities, whether it be storage or hoop house or, little community shelter. And then to the northern part of the property, we would look at planning for what we're calling larger plot community gardens. So we don't quite know what that size looks like yet. That's what our planning consultant would tell us. But the idea is we could potentially offer, larger plots for park customers. Now, what we're not ready to do at this point is offer these plots to people that are farming for profit. This would strictly be for, personal use, donation, and then potentially, nonprofits that are maybe working to grow produce for donation. So I think that's probably the one big change. Initially, we had talked about maybe the idea of what we call market gardens up here, which again are gardens that are farmed by people for profit, but we're not going to go there with this RFP at this point. So I guess just kind of wanted to clarify that with the commission, and then if everyone's comfortable, we would probably make a few tweaks yet to this draft, but then look to release the RFP next week. Hopefully get some responses, make a recommendation of a consultant for this body's review. And then if that gets approved, ultimately work with that consultant to plan this park over the next, 3 months. And then probably would look to break ground on park development, not this season, but the season after. And Scott, feel free to chime in if I missed anything.
Maybe a little bit more of the idea in the northern portion with trails and edible landscapes and those kinds of amenities.
Yeah, and then just to point out, we have $12,000 to pay that planning consultant. I think in staff's head, whatever the plan tells, or whatever the plan looks like, we would likely seek a third-party land manager to implement and manage on an annual basis. So staff does not have capacity to manage this park as currently conceptualized. And I think we've talked about that with the commission, but I think that's an important thing to keep in mind too, as we, work towards the ultimate plan.
And Julia, question, comment?
Yes, I have a question and a comment. So the question is, from where is the funding for this park is coming from?
From park improvement fees.
And how much money we're talking?
Well, we've got $12,000 allocated for the design.
Yeah, but I am talking the rest of the stuff.
All right, exactly. I think the first idea is to get it designed and figure out what we're going to have there, and then certainly implementation of that design is going to have a development dollar amount component to it.
Okay, no, it will be nice if we have an idea. Also, I would assume that the design is going to determine how the cost of the park too, isn't it?
To a degree, yeah. I think we're directed to stay strictly with planning in this RFP, but I think we will have some sense. We'll have a good sense of that, and we'll make sure I think to your point, when we plan, we need to know what our plan will cost to implement and to manage. So, yep.
Okay. My other comment about that is that I think it's great that because there are a lot of the housing there, they are very tiny, that you don't have even a backyard, nothing. It will be great for the, especially from the condos or the townhouses that they don't have any parcel available for anything that, you want to have your vegetable garden. Maybe you can come here and have it. You know what I mean? I think that way it could be a great opportunity for land, for the homeowners that they don't have that, they don't have the land for anything, because I have seen those tiny houses, I call it. So it will be a great option for them also if they want to have like a, flower garden or community, vegetable garden, they can, have access to that. But I would like to know in general also how much it's going to cost to build this into.
Well, and again, I think the design, we have to kind of see what the design is, and that'll help us. And certainly, the idea of determining how many, how much money we have to develop it may in turn kind of direct the design of it. We certainly want to design something that we'd have the capabilities and the ability to implement.
Katie?
Wade, I just wanted to encourage you guys maybe to expand your project scope portion, because you're talking about that you want a plan with probable costs associated in it, and nothing in the scope defines the fact that you are looking for a plan or that you are looking for cost information.
Yeah, well, I think it's clear that we're looking for a plan. We did have requests for,
I would disagree with that. It says you are looking for a final report, and nothing defines what you are looking for in that final report.
Okay.
It
Okay,
just says a
yeah, we
report.
were,
So I would encourage you to maybe add some additional information as to what you are looking for
Yeah.
in that report.
yeah, and I apologize, I might have taken some, we were directed to take some of the operational analysis out and stick strictly to planning. So I will make sure we are clear on the planning in here. But Scott, chime in, I think we do have some direction as well in terms of what this RFP is to be for, so I'll defer to you on that.
Well, it's in order to utilize the dollars in the park improvement, it has to be strictly designed. And certainly at some point we want to try and get an idea through an RFP on what it would cost to manage not only this facility, but then partner up with all the other community gardens that we have within the city, because it's really getting to the point where our staff capacity really doesn't have the time to do it. So the idea of trying to find a budget amount that the park commission can consider in their operating budget for management of this facility, along with the other community gardens we have within the park system.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, Katie, and I apologize, but yeah, kind of the language that we've been directed to use is right here. So that black text there is what the final design is, essentially a plan, but that's the language we have to use
in order to utilize the dollars that we have in the park improvement fees.
Yep.
Wade, I agree
So-
with you that it defines that you are looking to develop a final design based on the concept design there, but it doesn't actually say that in your project scope. So I would just
Okay.
encourage
Yeah,
repeating
well-
it down there.
Yeah, we'll add that.
And Chris, or Katie, was there any more that you needed? Okay, Chris?
Yeah, to follow up on what Katie said, you could even be fairly specific with deliverables, like, X number, to be clear that you want a plan. You could even, dictate the sheet size and stuff like that and what you want those plans to provide. I think you can't be too clear. More detail is certainly better than less. And also I took a spin through it and I didn't see anything about this proposal including a budget. Is that one of the things you can't ask for with this funding type?
Budget in terms of,
Or
like the design?
Yeah, construction budget.
Oh, construction budget. Yeah, Scott, I don't know. I mean, I guess. Scott, you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's that's a good point. The idea of we can think about that to give just a general comment included in the design is going to be a potential or a estimated construction cost, which I think is really gonna help depending on how many dollars we have to determine what those amenities certainly are.
And it gets a little tricky here too, because obviously this is a unique thing we're asking for in terms of a design. And there's a few or like groups in the region, nonprofit groups that are kind of small scale ag managers. And we've been talking with them and we envision them applying to this for this RFP. And but they're not construction experts per se, they're not plan design firms. They're more small scale agriculture firms. But yeah, we'll think about how to make sure we get all that required information, upfront with those groups.
I think, and I'd really be interested to get Katie's input on this too. I think that there could be two different ways you approach it. One is to sort of, pick a pie in the sky number of, this project, this park should cost, $3 million installed or something, pick a number. Or the other option is to, intentionally, specifically give them no budget and kind of let them go wild. And then, the benefit of a site like this is kind of enormous and broken up into different parts in different uses. So it's a project, and, a lot of it, frankly, is going to be dirt. So like the construction cost is not going to be a fortune. So you could just intentionally not give a budget, let the designers go hog wild, and then as a city, we can decide how we want to break that apart and install it, knowing that it may take years and years and years, but just to have sort of the ideal design thrown at us.
Julia, I see you have,
Yes, following up what Chris mentioned, my concern is that if we don't have a construction budget of, how do we know if they presented we really like the project, the design, but it's out of our comfort zone to build it. We don't have the funds to do it. You know what I mean? So, how do we manage that? How do we have to give it like a range to say, don't exceed X amount of money, because otherwise they can come up with a $10 million park.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and again, in our initial draft, we had some of those things accounted for, and we'll just talk, Scott, you and I have to figure out how to make sure this thing works. Yeah.
And kind of a park designation, that might be a strategy in regards to funding and availability of using of funding when we should at some point classify what this egg park is. Is it, a neighborhood, an area, or a community park?
And I understand the gist of the commission's comments here, and we will be sure to get all those boxes checked. So.
I just had one more comment, Wade. Yeah, I want to make sure that whatever the result is of this RFP gives you the information and the documents that you need to move this plan forward to the next step. So I just want to make sure that whatever is put in here at the scope gives you those documents to continue to move this project forward.
Yep.
I see Mr. Arnold.
Thank you, Sue. I hadn't planned to comment on this, but I would say that if I was on this item, if I was the customer of these proposals, I'd ask for them to provide required elements, possible optional elements, and cost estimates. So for example, they might decide that dirt and water were essential, and that storage was optional. And then once you've got that, you're not going to have construction estimates, and you're not going to be able to put it in the CIP, but at least you can start to pick out things that you want in the final design and go back for those at the next step. And I also wanted to thank the commission for hearing me out this evening. I'm going to head out. Thanks very much.
Thank you. So anybody else on this topic? Any additional questions or comments? So.
Yeah, if we could get an action to, per comments raised to get this RFP out to the public.
So a motion to approve with the comments included, as best able to implement those comments. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve.
A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Are we saying goodbye
Thanks,
to Wade?
Wade.
Thank you, Wade.
Have a good night.
All right. we are at 5D. Resolution R 1822, adopting the ARPA TID number 6 closure investment plan.
And if I could,
Please do.
Sue, yep, and actually, I think what's really, I did include in your agenda comments, which I'm going to read to kind of give the Park Commission a little bit of direction on what this referral is before you for and what potential action you could take. The intention of this referral is to provide an agenda item for the groups to share their thoughts on the investment plan with their council representative for consideration. So this is where Julia kind of mentioned a little bit about what she's looking to submit for this from the parks. Depending on the timing and level of support, a member of the council could then submit a proposal or a proposed amendment to the plan by the February 14th deadline for council consideration. So certainly there is enough time here for Julia as our representative to the council to take Park Commission comments and draft her amendments, if you would. And I guess with that, I would just give the floor to Alder Arata Frada, and then she can kind of walk through the amendments that she's thinking about and see what the Park Commission feels.
Go ahead.
Okay, so in the mayor proposed investment plan, in item number 4, that this one was what we call the leftover from the budget that we couldn't fund. And the McKee Farm Park tennis court is coming, okay? So that one is part of the mayor proposal, okay? Some other parks related item or are, native plantings in Fitchburg Park, some pilot sustainable vegetation in street medians, So that one is a part of the budget. There were amendments that they came to the budget that they didn't, they were not approved, but then they are part of this investment plan. So when so there are a couple of parks proposal that that I saw in a Scott list, and also some of my some of the stuff that I put together, and I want to mention to you. There are 2 buckets of money. There are the ARPA funds, that is $3.2 million. There is the TID closure, that is about $2 million, okay? And the idea is to invest in one-time expense that is not a recurring expense, and it's also that we use tax levy to pay for this. So it could benefit in the long term to taxpayer because it's something that we remove from the CIP or we don't have to pay in future years. So, and also the idea with this investment plan is that Alder have the option to bring new ideas that then we are going to decide about priorities. So everyone can bring idea. It doesn't mean that we need to go and remove stuff from the mayor proposed, only if there are some policy that we totally disagree, but it's different it's similar to the CIP plan where we bring ideas, but the difference is that we can, there are more chances that our amendments are approved in general, and then the council will determine in the next couple of years the priority of this project. So thinking on that, I have a couple of projects that from parks that using ARPA funds. One of them is, I was thinking, what about building an skateboard in one of the community park? Okay, so it could be an idea. We have people that, they came to this committee to request an skateboard. I think most of the municipality around us, they have an skateboard. We are the only one that we don't have this type of parks. So that one could be one. The other one is invest in the 9 Spring Park. This is my, is how we can make that park or more to be used more usable during the winter time, So the idea was to build an ice rink or how we can make the people enjoy that park doing a snowshoeing or cross country. We can, we can buy inventory of, cross country or snowshoeing so people can rent those and use the park more. That one is kind of for that park. What else? Also from using the tip closure, 1 second, I have my, for the tip closure, we talk about how we can, for the inclusive playground, the inclusive playground, Scott is going to put the final number for the inclusive playground, but it's going to be maybe a gap that we cannot cover with the private fund that we already collected. So maybe we can allocate some funds from Arpa or the teeth closure to cover for some of the expenses for the inclusive playground. Also, Scott mentioned the EAB tree replacement, Scott, that one could be another use of the teeth closure money. And then we have another big project that is the Kid Crossing Park that it had to be replaced in a couple of years. Is around, what we budget now is $750,000, but the idea is how we can put more matching funds in that, for the replacement of that park in the future, if we can allocate some funding for that park. The idea is to replace that park and use private and public funding, like a 50-50, like we did with the inclusive playground. But can the city allocate some funding for that park, What else? Did I miss anything? Here. The other park that has been in the CIP forever, and I have received a lot of complaint because it's in my district, and people use a lot. This is the Tower Hill Park Shelter. It has been in the CIP for many, many years. Every year we push this shelter forward a couple of years. And so that one is another, with a teeth closure, if we can allocate some funding for that shelter. Allocate matching funding for
Julia,
the park.
Julia,
Yeah,
did you say
Yeah.
Tower Hill?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that one is some of the ideas. I don't know. And also the hub, the hub is another, allocate some funding for the hub, especially maybe for the closure of the covered court or some other funding. Or I was thinking while we were discussing this today, maybe allocate some funding for the the pump truck in the hub. We can allocate some funding there too. So, the idea is to bring all these projects, and if the council at the end of the night say no, okay, we try, you know what I mean? But at least this is I think parts is something that if you read the Arpa filing ruling, it talks about investing in parks, and also it talks a lot about investing in parks that they are in qualified track census areas. The hub is in one of them, the creating another, like investing in parks that they are in the healthy neighborhood area are covered under ARPA, because this is an area where they need this type of infrastructure, and people are using a lot. So, so that one are something that that I have in my list. I call my wish list. So, but we'll see. I don't know if you have any other idea that I can bring forward. I can put another amendment. I would like to create, the way we are doing is we need to create group, so I'm going to create a group called park infrastructure, and then I'm going to add all of this, agenda, all of this, project of ideas. So this is how I am planning to present this.
And I was noting what you mentioned, Julia, and I think that most of those were the ones that Scott mentioned at a prior meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he also listed what we will soon acquire from the town of Madison is called Southdale Park. Monies for that. And Scott had 400,000, but I don't know about the timing of acquiring the park. I understand it's not in good condition, so it's something to think about. And then the mayor's plan had the water fountain for Hugo Jamestown.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he has the McKee Tennis fence and resurface, native plantings and parks. I also added his pilot sustainable vegetation in street medians.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah, those were amendments that Alder Gabriela Gerhardt introduced in the budget.
Yeah,
We didn't, for because we didn't have the funding.
right,
All those amendments are,
right,
we call the leftover from the budget that we are covering with this money too.
yeah. Well, and all of them, who can't use more money to take care of the properties we're supposed to take care of? The one thing that strikes me as important, just as important as the others, is to find the vegetation for the street medians, because, Public Works plans the streets, and then the engineer and design firms put in plantings, but then Parks budget maintains them forever. So the more sustainable they are, things that don't require as much expense summer after summer, spring, summer, fall to maintain, then that's gonna benefit the park system in the long run. And those were my remarks, and Patrick, I know you wanted to say something?
Yeah, a couple questions to Julia. For a skate park, was there some early version of the hub that was going to have a skate park in the hub? I'm not sure on that. Scott has his hand up right away, and I'm wondering if it is like too planned out, at least on paper, too built out already to have it there, or what you were thinking about where that would be.
Scott, go ahead.
Well, in actually, Ollie was the young man that was at the Park and Open Space Plan update meeting. And he ironically gave me a call today. And I indicated to him that we're looking to do an all wheels type of facility at the hub. And he felt that would be, a good way to get that skate park idea in. So it really seemed to work out well. So I think, on a couple of your things, Julia, with the hub, we're really, the idea of the winter activities at Nine Springs and the skate park, I think we're really beginning to start to roll those into the hub design, which is good, because we're going to take care of some of those requests from the community.
Yeah, I forgot about that. All wheels, also you can accommodate the skateboard
And Ollie confirmed that for me. I told him what we were thinking about doing. He says, yeah, that's perfect. So that works
Can I
out.
make a comment to Sue about the Southdale Park?
Please do.
I talked to Misty, and she told me that there are $400,000 allocated to that part from park dedication fee from the artisan village development that is in a tax incremental district in the town of Madison. That is going to be our part. So we are going to have that.
Oh, that's,
And I
that
guess what,
funding. Yeah.
that's good news.
I guess what I would add is that, with this one-time funding, Southdale would be a great project for that. And if we can utilize those parkland dedication fees for a different park, that would be, that'd be ideal too. Then we get, I guess the idea is let's see if we can provide Julia, and Julia's got a good list there of things that she can try to go to bat for us. So
Does anyone have additions for anyone? Patrick?
I want to back up a little bit. This all-wheels idea, is that something that, is that separate from the bike pump track?
The same.
Or is it a combination of like skateboarding on the pump
well,
track?
it's really designed as all wheels so that you can use, a skateboard, a bike, a scooter. It really has to do with hard surface, and you can utilize, any type of smaller recreational piece of equipment to you could utilize it with, utilize that area with those what do I want to say, with skateboards or bikes or those kinds of things.
Well,
So-
does that mean using the bike pump track, or is it a separate thing for other?
Nope, they could do the whole facility is designed for all types of wheels, so
Okay,
they could use the whole facility.
okay. My next question, and Scott, you can answer this first. Something years ago, former Alder Dorothy Kraus wanted a drinking fountain in Belmar. She almost got it, but then it never got built, right? Never got installed?
Joran, is there a drinking fountain at Belmar Hills? I don't think there is.
You
no?
two
I don't think
started, you started installing it, and then I asked a question about it that the council had actually like defunded it or something or other.
Yeah, I don't think there was ever any money put in the budget for that. We explored it. I met contractors to get pricing, but I don't think it ever got put in the budget. I could be mistaken, but I don't think so.
It was a few years ago, so I'm just wondering if that might be included since it has water fountain for Hugo Jamestown. Maybe, this long sought after drinking fountain in Belmar might be on there too.
I can add it into the list. So can you send me how, approximately how much it's gonna cost? Like maybe,
Not for me.
I can help you with that, Julia.
Okay, and then another question for Julia. I'm understanding that this is a one-time funding of ARPA and TID that the city has available, and in the very big picture on this, I'm seeing that the idea here is to use this one-time funding to pay for things that the city otherwise has not been able to include in the CIP. I'm wondering, as, let's say, a taxpayer, since money is being shifted around, is there anything that the ARPA TID money is being used for something or other that frees up city money then from our property tax to maybe apply to the outstanding loans and debt service that the city has? I don't imagine ARPA and TID could do it, but
if you read the final ruling of ARPA, you cannot use that money to fund your reserve fund or to pay for loans or
no,
debt.
yeah, and that's why I worded this way. I don't imagine that the ARPA and TID could be used to pay down debt. But if it frees up other property tax money, then maybe our property tax money might then be used on debt service, and the ARPA TID money pay for something that was otherwise going to be paid for by property tax money.
Well,
Switch them around.
this is the idea is that we can use these funds to, to fund other projects that we are planning to use taxpayer money, so eventually, it's gonna help taxpayer money in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, somewhere or other, at some year, hopefully, we are supposed to pay off our debt too. And the debt service, it seems to me, was a rather significant slice of the pie when we would see that. So the answer is no, it doesn't work out.
I don't know, but, eventually we use this money, using taxpayer money, that maybe we need to get that money from debt. Maybe, yes, we can connect what you want to say, but usually the city use debt when they build the big project, like road construction, the fire station. We are gonna use some, so this is when usually the city use debt.
Right, but I mean, in the long run, then we also have to pay off that debt. And right now, that is intended or assumed to be paid off by strictly property tax money, right?
But I don't think that's a question Julia can answer.
Well, this
and
is a general thing related
right.
to this
But
whole
we
Arpa TID
definitely,
thing.
we definitely may not directly correlate, well, we just used ARPA money, and so now, or we're going to shift that and pay off some debt. It just can't be that. And I just don't think we have an answer to that, what you're asking right here now.
Well, in general, this money can be utilized for projects that would be paid for with tax dollars. So in theory, you're taking that future debt off the taxes because you're able to utilize this $5 million to do projects that would normally be paid for with property taxes.
And to also tack on to that and also reinforce something that Julia mentioned, one project is, for example, the Tower Hill Park Shelter needs work. So that work deferred might lead to additional deterioration of the building that costs the taxpayer more in the long run. So trying to get something that's that long deferred fixed soon can potentially reduce costs down the road. If we would wait 5 more years, we'd have a much more expensive project for something like Tower Hill. So I second that vote for Tower Hill. Any other comments about this? And if something else comes to mind, certainly anyone can contact Julia.
Yeah.
And then the hearing dates
Yeah.
are on that schedule, and I wrote them down somewhere.
I saw a deadline of
Yeah,
February 14th.
Yeah, the deadline is the 14th, but if you have any other ideas, please do it before the 14th because, I will try to submit my amendment, by the 14th, not the date of the 14th.
Yeah, you need
But,
time, to work on your amendment.
Yeah, but this is a great opportunity for the city to have this extra funding, and I think what the mayor put together was also the council had a meeting where we also provide him with some of our priorities, and I think he has his own priority in the proposed investment plan, but also he got some other priority from us, Alder. So there are something there that I already have my list, but he already covered because we discussed. So I think this is a great opportunity for the city, to have these extra funds,
Agreed. Okay, so we have covered all of that agenda item, and so we are going to move on to, well, we're not, do you need there's no vote, we just reviewed the list, correct? And we are,
No, you need to approve the resolution.
oh, we do, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I move to approve resolution R1822.
Adopting
Second.
the ARPA TID number 6 closure investment plan. Sarah, did I hear you second? Okay.
Yes.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. I got so wrapped up in the details of getting back to Julia later that having to vote on the actual plan as proposed is now done as well. Okay, so now we are on item 6, discussion/action item 6A, McGaw Park tree removal. So Scott?
Yep, I can walk you through this one. This is an item that, we did have a neighbor, of McGaw Park, contact us, in regards to some trees that are park trees, but, you know, over time have dropped limbs and those kinds of things. But, the concern is that the trees are, if they fail, or if they fall down, they'll be on one of their structures, along with the idea if they're out mowing the lawn and those kinds of things, that they were concerned about these trees. So what we did then is we hired a firm to come in and do a tree assessment on these specific trees. And I did include that assessment, which was done by Bassett, in your information. So what was decided is that we needed to, you know, figure out a way to get these trees removed. So what we did do is, because of the, you know, Patrick's passion for McGaw Park and his involvement in there, we reached out to Patrick, and we're trying to determine a way in which we can get to these trees to get them removed. And I included in your packet, let me see what page, it would be page 50 of your packet, which kind of gives you an idea of the location of the trees. Page 51 was some of the options that, you know, Joran and staff came up with the idea that in theory we could create a new path, which is a yellow line, to get to them, or we could use an existing path and then do the green approach, or even a more existing path to the north and use the pink line to get access to these trees. I did want to include the McGaw Park stand map for your information, which gives you a little bit of an idea of, you can see that the trees are located in stand number 3, and actually the perforated red lines are the existing trails. There was another potential option coming in from the north. If you're familiar with the North Park development, we do have a 15-foot or 20-foot temporary easement with the red line to come in from the south end, and then we'd have to come right next to the neighbors, and then, you know, get an access trail to the trees. I did want to include for your information that back in 2018, when the McGaw Park, there's a natural resources management plan, when that was approved, it did authorize us to do work in areas 1 and 5, but it does indicate that we cannot do any forestry management work in areas 2, 3, and 4. And I guess I would state that we're not looking to do any of the management plan activities in 2, 3, and 4. We're just trying to find the best and most efficient way to get to these trees, to get them removed. Now, and I know I did provide to the Park Commission some comments back and forth from between Patrick and staff, which hopefully kind of explained a little bit more about the process that we've gone through to try and determine a method in order to get to these trees so that we can get them removed. So I guess at that point, Joran's here to offer any feedback from questions that you may have. But at the end of the day, our goal is really to get to these trees and really with an idea of the least the least intrusive, if you would, to get them removed. So I guess with that, I'd open it up for questions and see what your thoughts are.
Do we have questions? Do we have questions of anyone on the commission to start? Chris?
Do any of those routes are they going to require any removal of trees to get through there just for equipment access or anything over, like an inch or something? Or is that a fairly clear path with just some underbrush removal?
Do you want me to answer that, Scott?
Yeah, go ahead, Jordan, because we've been out there and actually Patrick, we did tour it with Patrick. So sure, that'd be great, Jordan.
Yeah, depending on the route, all the routes, I mean, the woods is really got a lot of honeysuckle, buckthorn, invasive species per se that, aren't necessarily desired in a healthy wood lot. Each route is just a little bit different. I guess my recommendation would be the pink route. We're using the existing trail all the way in off of the Wild Heather parking lot, essentially, and then we would essentially create a new trail to reach these trees. There would be potentially some tree removals, but they would be box elder trees, honey locust trees, again, trees that aren't necessarily desirable in the woodlot. And honestly, I don't see a lot of trees that would need to be removed, even of those species. In walking it the other day, I was able to, point out a pretty good route that would pretty much be removal of honeysuckle, buckthorn. And I think we'd be able to meander, I would say, around trees, even honeysuckle or even box elder trees and honey locust trees. I would say up front though, that if one of those species or a non-desirable tree is in our way, I would recommend removal because they're not desired, they're invasive. And, if we ever do decide to do something in this woodlot, those species aren't desired. So I wouldn't let that stuff stand in my way of making this trail. I mean, I'm not looking to make a highway through here. We're talking about, maybe a 15 to 20 foot wide path, which, basically big enough to get our bucket truck down, our chipper down, and just equipment. I don't think it would be overly noticeable after a short amount of time, honestly, the trails in McGaw Park are very narrow in a lot of spots. So, widening them, even just to get to these trees would do them benefits for maintenance and so on and so forth. So I guess with that, any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yeah.
Okay, and we do have neighbors, the Halfords here. Are you the folks with are these the trees along your lot line? No. No, these aren't trees they're not affecting your yard. Okay. Okay, well, come on up to the table.
You coming up? Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
I've been sitting a long time.
I'm Dave Halford, and this is my wife Nancy. We live at 2621 Tarpleywick Hills in Fitchburg. I'd like to thank Scott and Jordan. They did come out this past Tuesday, and we walked the areas where Jordan thought would be feasible. And I agree with him. There are paths that can be used to get there. But I still think there probably would be a few trees that would be a live functioning well tree, even if they are black locust or box elders, would be damaged or destroyed in that process. Neither Scott nor Jorn mentioned what was mentioned as an alternative in our Tuesday meeting or walk through the park, in that there's a bid from a private contractor of $4,000 to take care of the trees and remove them from the area. And that's the alternative I would support, because it's simple, because they can access the trees through the neighbor's yard, and there's no need for a path to be put into the Area 3 of McGaw Park. So I would ask why that alternative wasn't brought forth.
Scott, yeah, and Scott will respond. Let's have Scott answer that part right now, if that's all right?
Well, and actually, I did provide that information to the Park Commission members. There was correspondence between Patrick and myself, and I did include in that information to the Park Commission that there is, Jordan was able to get a price, and Jordan can speak to that, but just a general budgetary type of consideration. We do have in our budget $3,500 for emergency tree removal. So in theory, you know, that $4,000 could be utilized. We still would be $500 short, but I would caution the use of those dollars now. We still have the summer season, and there may be some dangerous trees that Jordan and his crew aren't able to get to. So to use up those dollars now may not be a sound decision. And certainly, you know, this is work and equipment that Jordan is able to get done, and we really prefer and recommend to stay on our property. You know, you begin to start to get on private property, and if the Park Commission is interested in that, you know, there still isn't, there would have to be some what do I want to say, some comfort from the city in hiring a contractor, and then they're going on private property along with the private property person okaying it, and those kinds of things. It's just, it is cleaner to, especially when we have access through our property, to utilize our property to get the maintenance work done.
It is our understanding that the neighbor has said it's okay to come across our property.
That's correct. But again, whenever the city, whenever we go on private property, there's additional exposure that we have and those kinds of things. So that would be something that we would have to work out to ensure that everybody
So that would
is
involve
comfortable
getting a
with it.
waiver from the neighbor, I assume?
Pardon me?
It would involve getting a waiver. The neighbor would sign a waiver saying she accepts the responsibility of a private
Yeah,
contractor coming across her
I
land.
couldn't respond to that. It would be, I'd have to talk to our legal group to find out what they would need in order, and maybe they might recommend that, you know what? You know, that doesn't seem reasonable. We've got our own property, and we should be able to utilize our own property to get the work done, so.
I would also just point out information, this goes back to the forest management plan, and I would point out that the plan has only been approved for areas 1 and 5. It has not been approved for 2, 3, and 4. So any activity which would involve cutting down a fair number of trees, and I agree with Jordan that the paths that he pointed out to us that he would choose, there would be a minimal amount of trees, but there's still a possibility of probably 4 or 5 trees getting destroyed to get at 7 to remove. But the point there is that at least the paths that the paths that are shown in the packet, I estimated that they were probably 600 feet to maybe 1,000 feet long, and Jordan is talking about a 15 to 20 foot path. You're talking, say, 700 feet times 15 feet, that's 10,000 square feet. That's a quarter of an acre. And according to the forest management plan, the tree density in that area is over 400 per acre. I don't think that's the case now, but even if it's 200 an acre, you're talking about the possibility of damaging more trees getting there than you're talking about removing in the damaged trees.
Scott, go ahead.
Yep, and I guess I would, this is not, we're not working on a management plan to do any woods management in areas 2, 3, and 4. Our goal is to, is to get these trees removed. And I think you kind of alluded to it in your comments that you realize that there wasn't going to be that many trees that would be removed. So I guess I would just offer those comments.
And Julia?
No, my comment is that we need to follow the process. We cannot have back and forth, question and answer. I think it's time for the commissioner to discuss this and to make a recommendation.
Well, have we heard the basis of your comments? You've been able to make them,
The
correct?
basis of the comments on that, there's one, we would point out that we have we think that the page 54 of the packet, the resolution statement, I think I sent an email to you, basically saying that that's not the correct language in the resolution, that the resolution that was amended and adopted February 13th, 2018, has two additional words in that final clause, which are important because they're the words that establish that the plan is only approved for 1 and 5 areas and not 2, 3, and 4.
Correct. However, as I hear Scott saying, and Joran, there's nothing provided to us to say that we are doing anything other than deciding how we're going to get those trees.
I agree with that. I'm just saying that we would like it to be on the record that that information in the packet is incorrect.
Scott, did you have something you wanted to
Well,
mention?
and let me read this to you, Dave. This is the final, now be it hereby resolved, portion of the resolution that's in the packet. Now be it hereby resolved by the Fitchburg Common Council that it approves the McGaw Park Natural Resources Management Plan in areas 1 and 5, along with the 5-year implementation of said plan in areas 1 and 5, with implementation of only areas 1 and 5. Any further implementation of the plan in areas 2, 3, and 4 will be reviewed and approved by the Park Commission and Council at the appropriate time.
May I address that?
Yeah, there's two words that that are in another version, and I did see your email. So you're just pointing out there's two words that Scott did not read.
If I can show you what the two words are. It's in the final clause of the resolution. The resolution that you have in your packet says, any further implementation of the plan in areas 2, 3, and 4 will be reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission and Council at the appropriate time. It should say, any further approval and. The two words that are not in there are approval and implementation of the plan, indicating the reason that was done was the council was clarifying that they were not approving the plan for 2, 3, and 4.
Correct. But here we're only talking, and now, thank you. And I know Katie wants to comment, and I will just say, we're not making any alterations other than what may be decided to be done to remove trees that a neighbor has pointed out are a hazard.
You're not getting my point. My point, I'm not arguing with that. I want to make sure that the correct resolution is in your packet, because if it's an incorrect resolution as it is, it gives the impression that that's what was passed by the council,
All right.
and it is not.
Okay, and thank you. I think what would have to do is simply be it reflected in the minutes, because at this point, a packet's been posted, and we can't now substitute something into the packet after the meeting's over. So we can clarify it in the minutes, and I see that as the solution. And Katie, you have, we're past it, Julia?
Yeah, I think it's already 9 o'clock. The question is, we are not, I don't think that this body is trying to make anything in the areas 2 or 3 and 4. So the only thing that we are trying to do is to determine if our own people can go and remove the trees, and that's it. They are, it's an emergency situation because the consequences that these trees fall in property that maybe, and this tree belong to the city, so the city liability is huge if we don't remove this, tree in a timely manner. And then I don't think anything, I know that Jordan and Scott has a plan to go and reach out to those trees without destroying or removing more trees. So I don't know why we need to discuss this removal of tree, to be honest, in our meeting today, because I think this is an internal thing that Parks Commission should be, the Parks people should be doing.
I'm agreeing with those remarks. This is something that Joran and Scott can find the best way to get in through the park. I'm concerned by, I appreciate that there's a potential method of going in on private property, but the problem there is we wouldn't have enough money to cover what it's estimated at. We don't know about our legal department, and once that money is spent, we have nowhere to pull from when we need it. We're only in the first month of the year, so I would not be in favor of that separate option of going in on the private property with a contractor's equipment. We do?
Wait. So,
Okay, so is there anybody else in the commission who would like to comment?
oh, absolutely me.
Okay, Patrick, go ahead.
First question, Scott, what did the Bassett Tree Care Arborist report cost?
That's a good question. I've been asking them for an invoice, and they haven't sent me an invoice, to be honest with you.
So you have no idea what they're charging for this? What, it's
I
like
don't know.
13-page report or so? Okay. I'm glad you recognize that I'm prime person in this, and you did call me first to discuss this with me. You described it as an idea of widening the paths and cutting down some trees, which turned out to be quite different from what I heard when I met with you at your request on January 12th, I believe it was. One thing I am wondering, since I heard from you in almost mid-January there to ask me to come in and talk with you about this, you and Joran in City Hall, but the Bassett Tree Report says that they examined this on October 13th. That's 3 months earlier, and then read a report October 25. I'm wondering why a 3-month delay? What was going on for that 3 months when nobody heard anything, including me?
There's a lot of things going on within in the Parks Department. So
Okay. So it's just got set aside for a while, for 3 months?
That's fair, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. I've been hearing different stories, conflicting stories from both of you guys. One thing was widening the trails and cutting some trees, and then it turns out that you want to take one of the main trails that's used by a lot of people and widen it to 15 to 20 feet wide, which I have called and I will continue to call a truck route, to get a large bucket truck in there, a truck that is too large, 12 feet, 6.5 inches tall, don't know the width, but 8 feet, whatever, too large to fit through next to this property owner's garage. I'm the next door neighbor of this property owner, so I'm well versed on the whole situation. As far as her request, one of the trees has fallen down, I think about 3 years ago, and she's been after you guys to do something about that. And it's still there.
But
And then,
Patrick,
what?
we have to allow our staff
Okay,
to do,
I have more to say.
oh, I appreciate, I know you're upset, but the staff has to be able to make these decisions. And so nobody on the commission is speaking in favor of using the emergency funds.
I am.
Thank you.
I have more to say on this.
All right, but we have to wrap up soon.
Well, I don't want this
Because
rushed.
this is an internal
Okay.
decision that is the staff's decision to make.
A quick background in this was a very hot, contentious issue some years ago when that resolution came up. And we had several neighborhood meetings and city meetings all about this, and a lot of my neighbors came out, and all of the neighbors who border McGaw Park with their properties and were interested in this opposed this work. And the result of that was Resolution R1718. And I want to point out just something that I created that page there the other night that had the minutes of the February 13, 2018 council, where, as I was happy to see, an amendment to protect the interests of the neighbors was moved by then Alder Aaron Richardson and was seconded by our same council representative, Alder Julia Radafrada. And this is the point where all of the neighbors who border the park who are interested in this, including me, strenuously are asking for your same support here. Now, as far as this proposal, I've heard, as I say, multiple things, because when I met with Joran and Scott, first Joran said that, oh, his parks crew is well versed in this. They cut down trees every day. They're very well adapted to cutting these trees down themselves. But then when we were out on site right there, then Joran, you said it wouldn't be any of your people. It'd be somebody in Public Works. You'd have to find somebody skilled with a chainsaw to cut it down. So I'm getting different stories along the way. Now, as far as my neighbor right there, I'm wondering how recently, Scott, you may have called my neighbor to update her on this item, her request, anytime recently?
I haven't spoke to her, but I
Okay.
believe Joran spoke to her.
I spoke
Okay.
to her the other day. Yes, I
Okay.
spoke to her when I met the contractor out there.
All right.
And for clarification, Pat, it is my crew that would be cutting
Oh,
these trees.
so it's back to your crew now. Okay.
It always has been my crew.
Well, on site, you said it wasn't your crew.
Right, Patrick? We
Okay,
really
I have
got-
more to
and-
say. I would
well,
like to continue.
Please hold. Julia would like to.
I have the floor. I would like to continue.
Well, that time is ending because this is a staff decision.
I don't believe it is.
Well, Julia, go ahead, please.
I have some more to say.
What I want to say, Patrick, I understand your position. I understand you're very passionate about the McGaw Park, but no one here is going to try to go there and make I don't think that Scott and Joran are going to go there and start cutting tree because they want to cut tree to access. They want to go there and access the tree and remove those trees that they are, in a very poor shape. That's it. I don't think that the city is going to go against something that is already in a resolution, okay? That we are not trying to do any management there. We want to cut a couple of trees. That's it.
Okay, and I want to respond to that.
I don't think that we need to waste more time on that. I
don't want this
right
item cut short. This is very important to myself and all of my neighbors who border this park. So I want to continue.
But Julia has called for a vote. Would we need a second for that?
I would like to continue. I have more to say on this. It is
Anyone?
very
Is there a
relevant to
second?
this.
I'll second Julia's. This is a staff decision.
Okay.
I don't agree at all. Okay, I
Right.
really want to continue on
Those
this.
in favor of continuing to
I highly
allow this,
object to this continuing. I
allow
have
the
not
staff
made
to
my
make their
position clear.
decision on how best to access the trees, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. The motion carries to allow staff to use their best judgment to remove the trees.
I object to that judgment, and I have another alternative that is much better, and I've talked with my neighbor. My neighbor even says you should use the private company. I talked with her. She called me a couple of days ago, and when I advised her that the plan was on the packet and she could look at it there because it was not provided, and that the bid was $4,000, she said you should
Patrick,
grab it
can you
before
have
they
those
take it back.
Can you have a conversation with it? I will say that I would recommend at this moment, you need to have this conversation with the city administrator, okay? Off the record.
Okay, item 7,
Sue,
yes.
before you proceed, could I just make a comment since I did register to speak and haven't spoken yet?
Sure.
Okay, I would just like it entered into the official minutes that the exact copy of resolutions R 1718 that is signed by Patty Anderson, the city clerk at the time, and Jason Gonzalez, the mayor. I have the signed copy here on the back of a mailing from Scott, from the Parks Department. So this is the official signed resolution, and the Parks Department does have this copy.
Correct. I
Available
believe
to
we
it.
do. I don't believe it's missing, or I don't believe it was intentionally left out. It was just a question of putting together a packet of hundreds of pages.
It's a
So I would
discrepancy
like
in
that,
wording.
that version,
Yes,
as it is there, entered into the minutes of this meeting.
Instead of the copy, which is wrong, which is in our packet.
go ahead,
Well,
Scott.
then there's two different signed copies,
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah. I can give
Okay.
this to you, Scott, and,
Yeah, that'd be,
we'll,
I'll include it for sure.
okay.
That sounds good.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's all I wanted.
Thank you. Thank you.
I did ask for a roll call. I don't think that was done.
No. It wasn't.
Well, it has to be then.
It must be?
Yes. Ask an alder.
Are we required to do a roll call, Julia?
There's
This
two
one is
alders
not
there.
even a resolution that we have in front of us, so I don't think that we need to do roll call. They are asking for what is our opinion? you know,
Yeah.
And we are making a recommendation, so we are making a recommendation that the tree should be removed by city staff, that's it.
Yeah,
Well, we took a vote.
right. I think, though, I think Julia is correct in that you could have a roll call for official business such as a resolution. Scott, any other opinion on that?
If a roll call helps Patrick, do a roll call and then, yeah.
Okay, well, I want to leave it just as it is. We are talking about cutting down some trees on city property, and it's done all the time, and I want to leave it just the way it is.
I'm noting my objections to being cut off and no roll call and not being allowed to finish my discussion on this.
Sure, sure.
In other words, Scott, I want it noted in the minutes.
All right.
Got it.
We are on 7, communications. Scott, can you take us through our communication items, please?
Yes, and the first one is, we're in the process, actually, Jordan put together a couple RFPs for two different playgrounds, one at McGaw Park near the pickleball courts, and then another one in Hillside Heights. So those are currently out for bid. You did talk a
Question
little
on
bit
that.
about, pardon me?
Question on that, your bid information for this playground doesn't specify where this playground equipment is supposed to go.
Yeah, the McGaw one is going to go in the locations that's identified in the site plan for that area adjacent to the pickleball courts. And then the Hillside one, I would suspect is going to go relatively close to where the existing one is.
Okay, then I'll question the one on Hillside Heights because I don't know how this would be answered for the one in McGaw Park by the west side of the pickleball courts. But based on in Johnson Park, that is my neighborhood park for my neighborhood, and new equipment was put in there, I think, a year ago, I believe, maybe the previous year. And in my neighborhood, there's 5 kids. And it seemed kind of wasteful to put in $40,000 worth of equipment in my neighborhood park, Johnson Park, when there's 5 kids and I don't even know if they use it. In Hillside Heights, do you have any idea if there's even any kids there that would use brand new equipment? I mean, what's the point of putting it up if you don't know if there's kids who may use it and it sits unused?
This was requested from the neighbors that they wanted to have an updated playground in their
Okay,
neighborhood
all
park.
right. Appreciate the answer.
You're welcome. And then the next item, the inclusive playground update, Jordan again put together a bid document that we're taking bids for the concrete sidewalk and the asphalt paths, along with the installation of the drinking fountain that Julio was able to get included in the CIP. So that's in the works. Stoner Prairie Park planning. I wanted to let you know that we were able to get the purchase order for that. And I met with EOR today, and we've got our plan put together. And so you'll be seeing some information soon on that. The park designations and related matters, there is no report on that. And then we are getting into the CIP season. So there may be a CIP proposal coming to you in the very near future.
Okay,
And
good.
that's all I have for communication.
Okay, and then moving right along.
I have a question on
Yes.
communication.
Go right ahead.
So, in a previous topic, which I didn't get to speak all of my questions on, you mentioned the emergency fund has $3,500 in it. Now, I know that emergencies are the least predictable thing of anything, but I would like to request, Scott, that you give us a report, which could be email, would be fine, or else next meeting, of your emergency fund, how it started out in the last fiscal year, and what you spent that emergency fund on in the last year, just as a snapshot view of that. And I know one of your objections to using it in the topic we just sort of talked about, that I didn't get to talk on, but if it shows that you needed that emergency fund significantly, and can, show us that it's used a lot or something, I would suggest that maybe the Park Commission might be interested in advocating for more money being put into your emergency fund in the next budget. If you can, show us how it's being used.
I can report that we did utilize the $2,500 last year for tree removal in the Seminole Glen kettle, if you would, because it was in a location that we weren't able to get equipment into. So we did actually hired the company that provided us a bid. They were able to get their scissor lift in there when we're able to remove the tree in the Seminole Glen kettle, so.
Yeah, I do remember Sue reporting about that. That was a difficult situation and an outside company was used. And that's exactly why I advocated using this money through my neighbor's yard, which she was actually fine with in this situation as well, which would be a much better solution.
Any other questions about anything in communication? Okay, Scott, staff reports, obviously they're here. Does anyone here have questions about the staff reports? Okay. 9 is future agenda items. One of the things I hoped we could talk about at some point, doesn't have to be next month, I don't think, but the review again our policy for naming parks, because some of that has been brought up tangentially at Committee of the Whole or Common Council regarding honoring individuals. And so if we can just see that and talk about it at whatever meeting it fits at soon, that I would appreciate that. Is there anything else, Scott, that you know you want to put in, just to give us a heads up, or anybody else have something for a future agenda item?
Well, I do have on the list for March is the CIP, spring tree planting is going to be on there. But that's all I really have on the March list. It sounds to me, we may have a report from the Stoner Prairie Park Planning. And Wade, you know, certainly we're gonna come back with the hub, so that'll also be on the March agenda.
Okay, all right.
Can,
Julia, yes.
so regarding the naming of the park, can you send the policy to all of the commissioner about, there is a policy that it was drafted in 2013 about naming parks.
Yeah.
So it will be good to start to have that document because the city doesn't have an ordinance regarding naming parks or any public facility, and it will be great that we can convert the policy in an ordinance to set up, what are the, the guidelines or the processes to, to name parks. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
I'll send that out. I'll send that out first thing. Not tonight anymore, but tomorrow.
Okay,
Unless you want it tonight, Julie, I could send it to you.
I think she's saying no. Okay, so
Okay,
we,
thank you.
item
Thank you.
10, the next two meetings, March 3rd and April 7th, 6 PM. A motion to adjourn?
So move.
We'll give Sarah the motion and Julia the second. Those in
Okay.
favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's 9:29.
yeah.
We are adjourned. No one's opposed.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
You too.